Yo, yo, yo.
Hello.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 104 of Heelanhammer, sponsored by Old Games. On today's show, we talk rankings, and we have a good look at the US Masters. We have a very special guest, first time on the show, who is here to tell us all about the weekend's action. All this and more on today's Heelanhammer. Hello, Wayne. How's it going?
Yeah, I'm very well, thank you.
Good. Welcome one and all to another episode of Heelanhammer, live from sunny Portsmouth. Feels like ages since I've said that. So there you go, Lasai. I did actually do something live though. We're talking about the US Masters. I've probably already covered it, but I was on the YouTubes and it was actually live. We broadcast it as we were doing it, and then you could see it recorded. It's still up there now. So there you go.
Your pasty face was on camera.
That was it. Yeah, I think we must have already mentioned it because I remember doing the face for radio joke. So yeah, there you go. So welcome once again. First off, just very quickly, our sponsors, www.oddgames.co.uk for all your fun time needs. Great supplier of all your hobby stuff that you need, especially if you're into your ball games, card games, etc. Wayne's winding me up by pointing at the 5th edition Undead book, saying that skull looks like my head. He might be right. So
it's you on camera.
It is me on camera. I'm not very photogenic. So
I don't think his eyes aren't as dark as yours.
No, that's true. That's true. He doesn't look like he's been on some heavy medication. So yeah. So yes, Odd Games. Make sure you check those out, especially if you're into this X-Wing, which has taken the UK and the Twitters by storm. People who follow me on Twitter will know my love for all these Warhammer people that I follow that are now tweeting pictures of spaceships on a board each day. Love it. But if you that is your thing, make sure you check out Odd Games, and you can use the code in the show notes to gain an extra 5% off when you spend X amount. Check out the show notes for all the details. So Wayne, straight into the news.
Coming to you live from Portsmouth, this is the Heelanhammer Network News.
Well, the news is fairly short and sweet at the moment. White Dwarf Weekly is still chugging along, which has been great. Really enjoying that at the moment.
If you're into 40k.
Yeah, I mean, there's a bit where you could choose not to buy it because it is basically 40k the last few weeks. I've actually quite liked it because it forces me to read the 40k stuff, and I've sort of been. I was tweeting this week about it.
Well, slow down.
Well, you know, you've seen a lot of Warhammer people painting up different bits of 40k this week. So, but no, I've read it. I mean, like most people, I started off in 40k. So, and I do read the Horus Heresy stuff. I'm probably about 2 years, 3 years, 4 years behind everyone else on it, but I have slowly started to read through it, and I do like the background of it. And I think I've said multiple times on the show, I like the imagery and the models and everything else. I've just never been that infused about the game from a tactical perspective. But I was tweeting about this. I wanted to know what people thought in terms of age before my son could start playing it, because then I've got an excuse to go and buy Dark Vengeance or whatever the equivalent is now and push Space Marines around and go pew 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 pew. It's going to be amazing. So
my boy's been playing with my Space Marines for the last couple of years now.
Yeah,
it's not like playing proper Warhammer.
No.
We just roll dice and make stuff up and make rules up, and then we set a load of scenery up, and he's got the what they called Imperial Fists, is it?
Yeah.
The yellow ones.
The Sons of Dawn or whatever there. Is that the guy? I don't know.
No, it's the yellow ones. I'm sure they're Imperial Fists.
We got moaned at on Twitter about our lack of 40k knowledge last time, so I better not start spouting names.
It's not a bad thing though, is it?
No, it's not for a Warhammer podcast. So there you go. So yes, so at the moment the news has all been 40k. The Imperial Knights have come out. If you haven't seen the model, I think it's really good. I've seen the kit up close, and I've seen the kit over on Twitter in bits, and I've seen it in White Dwarf, and it looks really cool. If that has been your thing and you've been involved with that, that's great. As I say, for us, we're massive Warhammer fans, so it's not massively interesting to us, but it's good.
It's the kind of kit that collectors just buy, doesn't it? Just to paint up, because it's, I suppose in your regular 40k game, would you use it? I don't know if you.
Well, I think you can use it like allies. I mean, this is the big thing in the 40k universe. So our fellow club members tell me while we're waiting at the door each Thursday. So you can have allies, and one of these things fits. Oddly, a 40k person who tells me more about 40k was telling me that they don't quite fit on points levels because they're on odd points. So if they play like 1,500 points, you can have an army of them, but I think you can have 4 and a load of spare points that you can't spend any points on. So it's a bit odd, but you can use them as allies, which I think is probably more the intended sort of thing. So anyway, we're talking about too much 40k on this show, so let's move it on. Warhammer Visions 2 came out this month. Have you had a chance to have a look at it yet, Wayne?
No, have you got it?
Yeah, I have. I'll show you after the show. Might not be. We've got plenty of time to.
Is there any fantasy in it?
Yes, because it's the dwarf release. So I actually quite liked it. Again, I am still a fan of it. I still
Oh,
maintain.
you've got the digital versions, haven't you?
No, I haven't yet.
Right.
I need to phone them and see if I can transfer. I'm not sure if that can be done, but I would like to transfer my paper to my digital. So if anyone's had any experience with that, let me know. And we can relay the message to other fellow listeners who may be in the same position. But I still like it. I still think the price point's very, very high for it. But the actual content, I just like to sit there. What I like about it is, if you've got, like you and I, where we've got kids and there's other stuff going on, if you're just sitting at home and you've got 5 minutes and the kids do something, it's just quite nice to flick through. It's like a no-brainer thing to have on your coffee table, really, that you can flick through. Now, whether you've got £7.50 or the dollar equivalent to, to waste effectively on that kind of thing, I don't know. But personally, I love it, and I'll keep subscribing. So so that's been good, and the White Dwarf Weekly's been good. But unfortunately, there's not really a lot of news to report. On a community sense, we mentioned the US Masters, and this show's mainly about that. There's an interview with Jerry Parsley, the organiser, that follows this, that we talked about the whole weekend and how it came around and what went down, which is good. We haven't yet been able to contact the winner, about coming on the show. I have emailed him, but I haven't had a response yet. So fingers crossed, you never know, we might be able to get that as well. But mainly from a community perspective, the one big news this week was Rankins HQ has decided to shut down. I don't know if they're shut down now or shut down. I think they are shut now. For those of you who don't know, Rankins HQ supplied a ranking system for a lot of different sports and game systems and other things. It was a massive project launched by a really nice gent that you've met, Wayne, and I've met, Andrew Galea.
Yeah, top guy. Yeah,
awesome guy from Australia. Previously a member of the Australian ETC team, for those of you who are aware of all that kind of thing, and a big member of their scene before it got his heart ripped out of it when 8th edition came out, and a lot of the guys decided to stop playing. It's now appears to be a thriving scene again. But anyway, a little bit of history there. And he had this ranking system, and the UK have used it for years, and it's been a really useful tool, basically. And the our Masters event has been pulled, the top 16 from that at the end of each year, and that's how it's gone. And it's gone, and it's brought up some interesting topics on Twitter this week. So Wayne, what's your thoughts on it? Are you pleased to see it go? Because we should say originally you weren't that big a fan of the rankings, were you?
I've never been a fan of it. So.
No, I kind of liked it as a tool for what it was, and as a little bit of a jokey thing to do with your mates. I didn't take it as seriously as some others. But I mean, what's your feelings now it's gone? And
if I knew it was gone, it was gone for good, I'd be quite happy. But someone's going to take it on, aren't they? I bet someone's already sorted out taking it on.
And there may have been. I would say.
Let me guess.
Go on.
Can I guess if
you can guess? Yeah.
Ben Curry.
Yep. He found an instant replacement for it. Yeah, I mean,
right, okay.
In fairness, he's been running the Masters since the beginning, so I suppose it's kind of his baby to move on to where he wants. But there was actually within hours, really, the announcement, there were people jumping up. There was probably 5. I don't think I'd be going out on a limb to say there was 5 equivalents appeared, where people offering their services to do it or offering different services. So it's obviously, for the community, although there are those people that don't like it, I think there's a lot of people that do like it, and like you say, will instantly exist. But are you still in the camp that you were always in with that? Do you
I just don't want it. I just think I've said this many times. I just think it has a creep on what affects the tournament scene. I mean, it's 2 ways looking at it. I mean, if tournaments, people go to win because it's a tournament and that's how they see it. And it's kind of like, you must win, take as hard a list as possible and play as well as you can. And I get that. I'm not knocking that, because that's people want to win. It's human nature, isn't it? I just think in my personal view, that the rankings would kind of fan the flames a bit and make people try a bit harder to, be that top gamer, which the downside being that you get a lot of lists which are identical. Very few people are on the tournament scene are creative with their lists, because they all want to take the net list, or what is deemed as the problem with net lists. I think sometimes it's something, if a good player says this is it, then a lot of people take, play that race, take that army, but at the end of the day, they're not the same as that player, so it might not suit the game style, or they're just not as good as that player.
And you think the rankings has an impact on that? Do
you? I personally believe the rankings has had a massive impact on that, on the creativity of lists in the UK scene. I just think a lot of people just aren't. Before you had all the internet, the way it is now, and obviously people sharing stuff, which is is great. It is great. I mean, we wouldn't be doing this if it weren't for the internet. But the one thing it has had an effect on Warhammer, in my opinion, is the fact that a lot of people don't write their own lists. They don't come up with their own ideas or their own way of playing it in their own, just being original about it. What they do is go, I want to say for example, I want to play demons. Right, who's the top players? What list did they take last tournament? Oh, I can get that under this comp. I'll take that. It's like, really? So that's, and I think rankings has played a part on that, massive part on it.
What do you think about now? I know when we talked about this originally, it's a big topic. It's a big topic, and we were going to have Andrew Galera on the show, weren't we? But he couldn't quite make it in the end. Just times didn't match, and he was out of the country, etc. And I think you made the point that you felt that some people were going to take it a bit too seriously, and it might impact on people's approach. Do you honestly think it impacted on the players' on the table approach? I know you mentioned you feel it impacted their army design because of the need to do well, whatever. Do you think it impacted on the actual players playing? Have you ever come across it?
I bet. Well, obviously this is just opinion because I can't prove or disprove this, right? But I bet I would put money on once players broke into the top 30, it did affect the way they play, because once they broke into the top 30. In certain games that they were playing a certain style, they would maybe think about their positioning in tournaments and how it would affect their ranking points and like invites to the Masters, especially when you getting around that time and they're going to get to the cut-off point for where their placing is going to be. So yeah, I think it would have affected it. Really
Interesting. Well, I'm going to give you my opinion
because let's say you got say you got 2 tournaments left, right? You're just inside the Masters. You're just inside for an invite for the Masters. You really want to go. You're really keen for it, yeah? And you got two tournaments left. And one of the tournaments, you're in a game where you know that if you just don't go for the win, you're there, right? You can easily win. You could. I say easily win. You've got a chance to win, but it means taking a risk, Or there's that kind of in your background. You think, well, if I draw this, I'm probably going to finish top 10. That's going to secure my Masters place. I think that would. I'm not saying all players, because not all players think that way at all. But I reckon there's quite a few players out there that would think that way.
So I'll give you my opinion, but I will start off by saying I agree with you on that final point. I think the overall impact. I know when the rankings come, there are a lot of people saying we don't want it, and I remember when it got launched in, I think it was War Machine or something. The outrage that was caused by this. So there was a lot of people that have some very strong opinions on it. From my point of view, from the Warhammer scene, you and I have been playing tournaments since 98, 99, that kind of time. I honestly feel like, competitive wise, it hasn't changed. If anything, for me, the scene's more self-policing, so we don't have as many issues as we did. That's what I think. In terms of, do I think rankings has affected it? I don't think it's affected anybody's on the table gaming particularly until it comes to that point that you said. I think it affects final round ideas. So if somebody who's really keen to up their rankings may get a point where in the last game where they might just think, do you know what, I'm going to go for this and try and win because 19th position means nothing, but a top 10's quite a nice shiny thing to have, or in a smaller event, say like, you could finish 5th or you could get a podium. And before, you might think, do you know what's 5th in this field? I want to get a podium. Whereas the rankings might make you think, well, if I just play it steady and get a draw, I'm 5th. That's a lot of rankings points. That, I do agree with you. I think there is probably a few people over the time that have done it. Whether that's a drastically bad thing, I don't know. But obviously, it can create some non-games. But I don't think that's necessarily purely the rankings. I think the invention and the widespread media coverage of something like the ETC and team events where a 10-10, this 10-10 bro type, let's take a draw and set
that's
up
a different mindset though. You're playing in a team then.
Yeah, but I think that and the coverage that it's produced makes people more aware of that kind of play style. So, but I don't think that's necessarily a rankings thing. But I do agree that there could have been a small effect if people do that. What I personally think happens is people that are really keen on rankings go to more events. And they go to lesser known events. My personal opinion of how I've seen this done is if you've got a new guy on the tournament scene, he's doing a lot of tournaments and then really wants to make the Masters, what he does is he does all the events. He probably does okay at most of them, and then he thinks, well, I'm going to make sure. So he goes to some lesser known events where he's got more chance of winning. Now, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing because it means more foot flow to those smaller events. So I think that it's all swings and roundabouts as to whether it's a good or a bad thing, but I don't think that it's that. I certainly completely disagree with anybody that says that it created a point where people were more competitive or because of the rankings, their attitude on the table stank or whatever. I think people are generally like that regardless of the ranking system. I think if they want to win that bad, they're already in that mindset. But That's just my personal opinion on it, but I do agree with you that I think it had a slight impact. But when
I think the biggest impact is the list design.
Mm.
I really do believe that if a player's doing well in the rankings, obviously everyone wants to know what list he's running, and then they want that list because they just assume that that it's not the player, it's the list. So if I run that list, I'll do well. And we've seen it many times. How many tournaments have we been to where if you play a certain race, you don't even have to ask the person what is in the army because you know what's in the army because they're all identical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, though, I'm not sure 100% whether that rankings has a big impact on that. But as you say, I suppose if you're looking to do solid, you think what's doing well, what race to start off with. If you've got time on your hands or the abilities to borrow armies, you're not fast. What's doing well? I presume that does give you a leg up, doesn't it? But that does go across generally tournaments. If you know that demons are doing well, and you look at your next tournament you go into, and the composition system is still means you can get the build that Russ Field just won a tournament with in the next one, and you may well just take it. Or like we see with warriors or ogres, when all these power lists come out, as they were at that moment in time. People do gravitate towards them, they do copy, but I just don't know whether that impacted on the rankings. But my overriding feeling...
No, I'm not saying it impacted on the actual rankings.
No, sorry,
standards,
the rankings impacts on that.
The rankings does impact on, because if you can just go onto rankings and you can see where players are and how they're doing, and then they've got their race icons and all that kind of stuff, and they're consistently doing well, then you want to know what their list is. Yeah. Yeah. Now, obviously, you can't copy someone's playing ability because it's a lot of the time it's down to the amount of games. You need to play a lot of games, and obviously your knowledge retention while you're playing and not making making silly mistakes and forgetting stuff and that kind of stuff. If you've got the ability not to do any of that, then you should be a pretty solid player. That's the impact I think it's had. I think before rankings, you get people asking each other about but now it's widespread. It's literally, I mean, how many emails have we had where it's just like, I've just decided to have this army. Can you tell me what the best build is? It's like, well, surely the fun is finding out yourself.
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't, but then I've been, a competitive person. I've asked people over the years, what do you reckon? What are you taking? What would you take? Because it's it is a shortcut effectively to a basis for a good build. And you're gonna have to go and play it and tweak it. But if you get a bit of a shortcut, I can see why people do it. I'm not sure whether rankings affects that or not, but I understand the logic in why you feel like that. Definitely. I suppose my overriding feeling though from the whole thing when I saw it was a little bit of sadness really, because it's been. I mean, it come from a good time. It reminds me of good times anyway with the rankings and jibes with other people about where they were in the rankings and all the rest of it. And for me, one thing it has done is provided some sort of stats or basis for certain things. So a prime example being when 8th edition came out, a lot of people went, "Oh my god, it's a game of luck now." It's just a complete waste of time. But you look at the UK rankings for the last sort of 5 years, and generally the people at the top have been consistent. They're you get new people in every year, and people do well, and people find new armies, and they find their niche, and they get better. They put more time in, so you always get fluctuation. But but those guys deserve to be there, and the guys that have been at the top are generally the same sort of people. You see the same names popping up all the time, which means, in my view, that statistically that means that the game can't just be a pure luck who gets dwellers first or whatever, as people said. Things like that's quite useful. Race performance is quite interesting. Seeing where people, the highest best general for wood elves gets in their rankings, all that kind of stuff. Statistics are statistics. You can pull what you want out of them. We're both big football fans, and I'm sure you can appreciate the amount of statistics that get banded around for whatever the media want to spin at that time. So, but it was just interesting for people like me who like stats and like to see things. And if you're following,
that's the shame. Not the shame about rankings, but the shame. Basically, what you've just said is right, because the players that were good stay good. Because they, they put the time and the effort in as they have. So, kind of like the shame of the thing that is a bit of a shame about the whole situation is the fact that players have taken on net lists to try and do well at tournaments to get higher in rankings. And they haven't. Right, so the downside is they still end up where they end up
But the variety is less, is that
but
what
the
you're
variety of the lists in tournaments is far reduced. Yeah, so that's the bit that's a shame.
I don't think you're alone with that viewpoint necessarily. I mean, I don't know if there's other people that are shouting and 100% agreement with you about the whole rankings impacts this, but I do think this is a separate topic. I noticed, I think today there was a blog post by Rafaza, Raf Harbinson, who's a solid UK general who made the Masters this year and I think last year as well. Yeah, lots of years anyway. He's a good player. He's always kicking around the top tables. He does a blog that's really good, and he was talking today about that. I think about that he's feeling a little bit jaded in terms of what he's facing on the UK scene.
Yeah.
And that happens all the time over the years. I mean, we've been playing tournaments long enough to just expect it to happen at some time, but it does happen. And you get to a point, if you're playing well as well, that you're also playing the same people with the same armies, which gets even worse.
Yeah.
But
the big difference is before the internet explosion, and obviously how it's affected wargaming, and how it's benefited wargaming, and obviously been a negative on it. When we used to go to tournaments back in the late 90s when we started, because you didn't have the internet kind of the way it's used now, I could play against 6 Skaven players, and they'd all have completely different lists, and I mean completely different lists. Yeah, and then I could go to another tournament and play against 5 High-Elf players. And they would all have completely different lists. You just don't get that anymore.
No.
It doesn't exist. Yeah. And I think, I'm not saying it's all ranking's fault, because nothing's all anything's fault, but it has played its part.
But you feel it has a part.
It definitely has played its part. Yeah.
So have we. But yeah, no, I get the point. But yeah, from my overriding point of view, it's a bit sadness to see it go, because I do think it's been a decent thing for the community. There's a time as well where Andrew was putting in loads of effort and he was turning up at tournaments. I remember being at the Masters and being interviewed and all the rest of it. I mean, the Warhammer media is big enough now where people.
So I don't blame Andrew for any of that, right? I mean, Andrew's a lovely bloke. He's a top guy. It's just human nature, because of what it is. People react to it in a certain way, and then some people just, kind of react to it in what they see as a positive way. But what it does affect, I think the effect has been quite a negative effect on tournaments, with this whole, everyone's got the same Chaos Warrior army, or everyone's got the same VC army, or that's the thing, and that's nothing to do with Andrew, because all he's doing is he's creating something that people can use. Yeah, so what he's done, the effort and the work that he's put into it has been amazing. And the way he's built it up, and let's face it, to put that kind of time and effort into something the way he has, it's not an easy thing to do. So, hats off to him for that. He's done a great job. He's done a brilliant job of it, But the effect that I feel that it's had on the Warhammer scene is just it's not down to him. It's just down to other people.
So you're still unchanged. You're still not a massive fan after the years of having it, then?
Well, it doesn't matter now, because the damage is done.
I love it. The damage is done.
Well, it is done, because the effect that
you're like the Warhammer equivalent of Greenpeace, but yeah, sorry.
The effect of that. This is an oil slick that just won't go away. Awesome. Before I could have took me rat ogres. Now that it's like they're covered in oil and I'm pulling them out of the water, and I can't save them. No.
I like it.
No amount of detergent's going to clean them bad boys up, right? But no, it's kind of like the damage is done, because
it's here to stay now.
Because no matter what happens, something will take its place, or there'll be a new name for it, or will be exactly the same thing but be repackaged, and it will carry on, because that's what that's just the nature of things. That's what will happen. But the downside is for me, tournaments is I enjoy who I'm playing. If I'm lucky enough to get 5 or 6 opponents that I enjoy their company for the 2 to 3 hours that I'm playing, that's what I'll get out of tournaments. It's not very often that I can genuinely say wholeheartedly that I enjoy the games, in the sense of how someone surprises me with a list. And knows how to use it, because it's their list and they've played it a lot and they know what to get out of it. That doesn't happen very often, next to never, which is a shame. That's the real shame about it. That's just the nature of the way things have gone. Whereas if you go back to, like I said, back to the late 90s, that was everywhere. Every tournament we went to, everyone was running their own list.
I'm going to put this question to you, because I know there's some listeners that are going to be thinking this. Didn't you just take a Netless Warriors army?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I did exactly the same.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And was it because of rankings?
And I did
was
it
because of rankings?
Mate, I could have won that. It would have made no difference to my rankings. I might have jumped a few places, but but I did it with the Mournfang. I took the Netless Mournfang list, so I've done it. I did it before there was a net. I did it with the Chaos Warrior Chariot Army.
Back in the day.
Back in the day, came up with that, ruined some hobby. Yeah, so I've been there. I've done it. But it's not a good thing. And both times I took it. Yeah, which I told you afterwards, didn't I? Didn't enjoy either tournament.
No.
I ran 2 net lists, and both of them, what I found, and even when I did it with Skaven, I ran the net list with Skaven, didn't I? Beasthammer. And all 3 tournaments were dull as dishwater. They were just, didn't suit my play style, were just boring.
That's why.
Just real kind of just every game's the same.
It kind of proves the point, though, why it's a net list, isn't it? Because it's not something you would have gravitated to personally, because you don't enjoy it. Simple as that. Simple as that. So I think we'll leave it there. But yeah, rankings for me, I know we've still got our age-old stance on this. I quite enjoy them. You're not keen. And I'm sure that, from my viewpoint of the outs, from sort of a third party media perspective, looking at it over the last couple of weeks, the discussion as it's been, I'd say the community is exactly the same. There's loads, it's sort of a three-way thing. Those who hate it think it's ruining the world. Those who love it can't get enough of it, and then the middle ground that don't really care but like it as a tool. I noticed today somebody tweeting about they wanted to check out whether their first round. It was a quite an interesting tool that actually for the UK is some of the tournaments do a pre-draw, so you know who you're playing. So the Mersey Meltdowns this weekend. And you know who you're playing. You could go on Rankings HQ and check them out, see what they normally play, see how they've done in tournaments, and get a bit of an idea of what they're kind of like. You can't do that. And again, whether that's a good thing or not, that you could have done it, I don't know. But for some people, that was a nice tool. So it's just stuff like that. But I think the opinion is just like we are. It's sort of split on it. But as you rightly say, it ain't going anywhere. I'm sure it's going to be.
The thing I love about Rankings, if you've got a completely different opinions like what we have, it's that whole kind of like you don't really sort of go, no, you're wrong, you kind of go, well, yeah, that's your opinion, but I don't quite see it that way. I see it this way, it's just like, and it just goes on and on and on.
It's pretty much like we have for the last 27 minutes. But yeah, so I think we'll leave it there. But I'm sure there'll be enough talk on Twitter, and which is obviously the place to be really for this kind of stuff, for live coverage on these kind of things, breaking news as they happen. But yeah, Twitter and forums, I know I've been talking about it, so I'm sure if you've missed this, you've been out of the wide world of the internet, you can check it out and give your thoughts on it. So I think that's about it. So there wasn't a lot of news this week. Straight after this, we're going to be getting the interview with Jerry, and then we're going to come back and chat to you about our weeks in the hobby. We'll see you soon. Okay, so I'm joined by a special guest today, as we've already discussed earlier in the show, the key organiser and the man behind pulling everybody and herding all the sheep into the event that is the US Masters 2014. Jerry Parsley, welcome to the show, mate.
Hey, Dan, thanks. Appreciate you having me.
No worries. Cheers for joining us. I know we've been talking for a bit already before we get on this interview, so I appreciate you continuing to talk to me.
Oh yeah, always a lot to talk about with Warhammer anyway.
Always. I do love it. It's a good all-encompassing hobby, I like to think. So good. Well, welcome to the show. Your first time on, obviously, so that's good news. And I hope we'll talk about the future of the Masters, but you never know. Hopefully you'll appear on here again at some point. So before we start then, I think it's probably a good idea from people that don't know you or haven't heard from you. And I want to know first, really, a little bit about the background as you as a gamer. Tell us a bit about yourself.
Yeah. Well, regarding the Warhammer hobby, I was never really one of those guys who played a lot of tabletop games like Dungeons and Dragons and stuff like that. I mean, I think at some point all of us have investigated them when you're in middle school or whatever. But what kind of drew me to Warhammer was the models and just the idea of these huge grand battles. And like a lot of people, I probably got into it on a little bit of the pew side, the round basers, and it was all right, but it wasn't. I started reading those battle reports, and when White Dwarf was had those like invocative, that one Beastman report against the skeleton army, that Henrik Kemmler battle report, and back in the mid '90s, and basically at one point I just said screw it, and me and my buddies, we just sold all our 40K stuff and bought fantasy stuff because
proper purge.
Yeah, well, we couldn't do like the mega battles. We would be playing on a pool table with like a felt cover, and we turned it into a battlefield. I mean, you're in and out of the hobby, and certainly, at the high school age, you've got other priorities, like a lot of us did. But it wasn't bad to have a hobby. And when we did, we were like, why are these Tyranids hanging out with like the Imperial Guard fighting against like Eldar? It didn't make any sense. So we were like, well, you know what? We could probably cram stuff that makes more sense, like good versus evil, that all of us can play if we switch to fantasy. And that's exactly what we did. It was 6 of us, my brother and one of my good friends, Travis, and then 3 of our other buddies who no longer in the hobby, and we all got maybe like 1,000-point armies. And our first battles were the 3 dudes who had the bad guy armies facing off against the 3 dudes who had the good guy armies as mega battles, and that's basically how we came up in the hobby. There's no tactics, there was all kinds of stuff going on, and that's pretty much where we started with the hobby anyway. And then, of course, it grew until we found out about other aspects, like the tournament wargaming. That also, funny enough, came through White Dwarf. And the sad thing is, I think in a lot of aspects, are people, or maybe the people at Nottingham at the Games Workshop, they don't realize how endearing the older magazine was to us gamers who came in through that. I mean, we could pick it up at the newsstand and actually be interested, because these guys had a lot of passion. They had modeling articles and campaign articles like the infamous Battle of or Tale of 4 Gamers. They got a lot of people in our generation in that is emulated on just about every website community. But there was a battle report by how I did at the Grand Tournament about this guy Steve or something in the UK.
Was he a guy with glasses, or was it Steve, the guy with the frizzy hair?
Yeah, there's Steve with the frizzy hair guy. He had a goblin army, and for whatever reason, he had a white dragon. And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. He had a white dragon, and he took one anyway for gamey reasons, I imagine. So this dude, he put a battle report of building up to the event and how he went to the event, and that immediately said, you know what? I'd like to play against cool armies. And, of course, he got stomped. And even then, I guess there was a metagame and all that other stuff. And that seemed kind of cool. And I wanted to say, you know what, man, playing big 3-on-3 battles in the garage is kind of neat. But let's go ahead and give this competitive aspect a shot. So we painted up our armies, and quite poorly. We all took our armies to the Grand Tournament in Baltimore in 1999. So in the year 98, it was a couple of years, and I mean, I'll criticize younger gamers now and joke around with them about their paintings, like finger paint styles. And I gotta tell you, mine, it needed, intervention, because it was bad. I mean, like to get our armies painted, we stayed up the entire night before, and then I drove like 4 or 5 hours to go to this event, and there was like 5 of us crammed into like a sports car, and we did horrible. I think we finished, like, all of us, with the exception of one of our more experienced players, a guy who's on our club who played in the Masters this year, is a guy named Todd. He finished like 15th place, and I was like 43rd in my very first. I remember the number. I was 43rd out of 50 people at the first U.S. Baltimore GT that Games Workshop used to run.
It was a big deal, the Baltimore. I mean, that's the one that Wayne went for several years.
Yeah. I actually played Gareth Hamilton after, because I liked his army. Like the first year I went, my first army was Chaos Dwarfs, and I like I said, I saw that one army in Games Workshop, White Dwarf magazine, the one with all the skeletons. Heinrich Himmler is marching against the Beastmen, I guess, and that's when the Beastmen were part of the old 5th edition Warriors book. And so I wanted to do Undead, because I just like the idea of like skeletons and stuff. And, I'm a big fan of those B horror movies, like Army of Darkness and stuff. That stuff tricks me out. And I forced my wife to watch it the other day, and she said it was the worst movie she's ever seen, and I suck. But I love that stuff. I mean, the off-brand stuff, that's just the comedic factor. It makes me chuckle. But then I asked around, and I found out, Well, what's no one play in our area? And no one played the Chaos Dwarfs. And you could still get them on the shelves at that point. So I amassed this massive Chaos Dwarf army, and they're the ones I took, and, I got properly smashed with them, And then after that, we went to the second tournament, and after the Baltimore 2000, they expanded it to include like Chicago and Los Angeles and Seattle and wherever, right? And so this was the very, very prehistory of United States Warhammer, and I was at, I guess, the second and third one, because there was the year before the one I went to, but that one was real small, and it wasn't even in White Dwarf. The one I went to was the first one you could buy the tickets in White Dwarf if you cut it out and mailed it in.
Oh, right, okay.
Because there were no emails. You weren't emailing anything, unless GW happened to be on a user group somewhere, which they weren't. This stuff was going in the mail. Period. So after that, we went to the second one. That's when I played Gareth Hamilton's Skaven, and I modeled my Chaos Dwarf army against his Chaos Dwarf army. His Chaos Dwarf army the year before, when I took to the 99 one, had the red beards and, the blended like fiery beards and the black, as opposed to the GW, the red era, I guess you would call it, with the black beards. And, I was playing Bretonnians that year, and I was like, hey, man, I modeled my entire Chaos Dwarf army. And I sat there and talked to Rick Priestley about the fluff of my army, because we all had to turn stories in and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And some guys would have it on these elaborate scrolls. And I'm thinking to my friends in the community now, and they'd be like, no way in heck am I, burning the fringe edges of this parchment paper, And it's not like they didn't have paper stores then, Right. I mean, there'll be like just actual stores that sell types of paper in the mall now. That was,
No, I remember doing that. I mean, it sounds like you started tournament gaming, and the sort of time I did and Wayne did, and that was a regular occurrence. Decent points for a decent looking fluff, and people used to turn up with like tomes and all sorts of stuff back then. Mm-hmm. It was worth points,
and that's what I loved about it, because it really was. A measurement of how you were as a hobbyist, because a lot of people mistake overall as the winner of the grand tournament. No, overall, at the end of the day, it means the overall hobbyist who can, like bring in the sportsmanship. Back in the day, they used to have composition, like how the army would reflect as it does in the fluff. You'd have to have a background. It'd be painting. It'd be generalship, and it was just the accumulation of all those things turned into, hey, you're the overall Warhammer champion for this event. Mm-hmm. Now, I think the events have gotten, along with the internet, the hobby has exploded. And whenever you have more people in the hobby, it drifts away from those humble origins. You know what I mean? And it becomes like. And that's the one sad thing. And then that gets into rankings. And once you let the cat out of the bag, well, it's not going back. You know what I mean? No. There's no, I know Rankings HQ just had their thing where they kind of shut down, but, it's going to be very, very difficult. And I'm sure there's probably a couple of people that would be like, let's do a year without rankings,
Yeah, there was a bit of that. I don't think they're going to be able to, looking at it. But
it's just too difficult, because a lot of the people who got into the hobby, that's all they know. Mm. Like guys like you, maybe me, or especially Wayne, we would love to go to something where you can just really hit on the fluff aspects and stuff like that. But then you'd have those naysayers saying that's not quote unquote a real tournament. So I guess at the end of the day, maybe when you just become older, it just depends on what you want, So, so I did that, and then I got out of the hobby promptly after that event, because I was well into my college years at that point, and I was like, you know what, this is ridiculous. So then I got back in after I got married, and did the single life and all that stuff. And when I got married, the life was officially over. So
your missus isn't in this afternoon then?
Yeah. No, she doesn't get homework yet. Yeah. But basically, it's one of the situations where like, hey. Every time, and trust me, that first year of marriage, you're still going out on the weekends with your guys. When you get a chance, you get a babysitter. She'll go out with her girlfriends. You do your thing. The number of times I've gotten in trouble for stumbling in at like 5 a.m, can't happen, So I was like, I've got to find a hobby. So I grabbed the guys. I was like, you know what, man, let's play this game. We found our old models, played in a garage, and we were horrible at it. And it was great. And it keeps us out of trouble, and I think that's the natural progression. I would imagine most guys that start in the college years, I don't know if you've ever got out of the hobby for a couple of years and came back.
When I met my wife, similar thing. Yeah, I moved away for work as a promotion, and spent about a couple of years basically not playing tournaments, not really
Yeah.
in it.
I mean, I slipped out in 2000, got back in 2008. And when I was out, the funny thing is I'd go by a game store and I'd just pop in just to kind of take a look around, right? Because we were all middle schoolers or high school or middle school. We were just, guys at one point, and that doesn't mean because I don't play in the hobby anymore, that doesn't mean the Lord of the Rings movies weren't coming out, the Marvel superhero movies weren't coming out. So there's stuff that harkens back to your childhood. So you'll go into the game store and I swore I picked up like a box of Miles and it was like $50. And I was like, are you kidding me? And your perception of what should cost what changes if you get out of the hobby and then try to come back into it. It's a different cup of tea.
Definitely.
If I showed my non-gaming friends how much like a box of the new dwarf dudes cost, they would think I've lost my mind.
I showed my missus, I bought Teto Echo, the Lizardman special character, and I didn't realize it was fine cast. I thought it was plastic. £30.
Oh my!
Just for the model.
Wow.
I was like, sorry, what?
That's incredible. But anyway, that's effectively myself as a whole. I've got back into the hobby around 2008. And we started playing with a guy. I found a guy on a local forum, another clubmate of mine named Jason, and he was actually a competitive player. And he touched me back into he had to cajole me to get back into the tournament scene because we were playing in the garage and we were loving it. We bought one of those little battle things that clip together.
Mighty Empires campaign.
Yes, yeah, we got a Mighty Empires thing, and we based it off old white dwarfs and like the general's compendiums and all the old stuff, and we made our own rules and we were just happily plugging along on that. And he's like, guys, you're the only guys I play with down here. I've been going to the tournaments by myself for the past X amount of time. You got to come with me. So they got me into one, and then I got the rest of the club into one. And next thing you know, you're running the U.S. Masters. So so it's pretty crazy how it happens.
Yeah, I think if you ask quite a lot of tournament gamers how it come, it's a similar thing. You get with your mates. I certainly did at the age of 16, 17 or whatever. Someone was like, come along to this. And I thought, yeah, well, okay, why not? Get to play Warhammer all weekend and drink and stuff. Mm-hmm. That was that. And that's how it goes. So yeah, it's a similar story. So how did you decide then to do the Masters, and how did it all really, where did the idea come from and how did it come around?
Well, originally the idea came back in 2009. Because it just took that short year between 2008 and 2009 for me to set up a U.S. ranking system. I think it was like Warhammer USA or something, right? And that was one of the ranking systems. And then, of course, I was talking with Andrew about how he set up the predecessor of Rankings HQ back in Australia, because I'd follow along. And that's when Podhammer was going on full effect. That's, I think, before Bad Dice and Heelanhammer really found their footing, back in 2009.
Yeah, well, it all began there, didn't it? So,
yeah. So, and then, of course, the Australians did that great thing where they went to the ETC, and I was like, I want to build this for my community. So I just collected all the data from all these different regions, and I would hear like I'm in the Mid-Atlantic, and I have some players that played in the Northeast, and they would tell me how this person's the best, and this person's won X amount of tournaments, and then I'm like, well, here there's a lot of other people that are just as good. How can you definitively say that? You know what I mean? And it doesn't matter what region. I'm just speaking as an example, and that was always kind of interesting to me. And then eventually, I just talked to Andrew, and
from Rankers HQ.
Yeah, exactly, Andrew. And I just ended up just giving our data to him, or merging it with Rankings HQ, because to be honest with you, at the end of the day, I just couldn't be bothered, because the first initial dream was to form it off that website and have a USA forum, USA website that they could call their own. Like the Australians have Wargamers AU, which we clearly copied, and then they have TWF does like the British citizens, and then of course a couple of the Europeans and the ETC show up there, and the Americans didn't really have anything. The ones we had that were based in America were like Warseer and DACA, and both those are 40K based. So where do you go for tournament Warhammer? Where do you go to find out what tournaments are what? So we so and basically that's how it came around. It took another couple years until some of us were on the Warhammer forum trying to support this other tournament, the American ETC version, bragging rights that Matt Cassidy runs up in the Northeast. And through helping try to get other regions on board with that, I was very proactive to go. At the end of the day, I had 2 club mates that had some serious personal issues come up. Like one just started a job and the other one just bought a house, and the closing happened to be on that weekend. So we couldn't go, and I felt terrible because I was pushing like some of the guys from the Midwest and some of the other regions to let's go to this thing and support it. And then here I am, the jerk off whose club bails, however it turned out, that did put me in contact with a lot of the other leaders in the other communities. And it was from those email chains with all of us talking about bragging rights and trying to, hey, let's get the United States together. I think there was a strong interest across the country for it. And that's basically, that was the genesis of it. We used that email, and I emailed all those guys, and we kind of developed a system of chair people in regions, and basically put it on the individual regions on how to do it, how to select teams, and basically that helped us, and it's just like the feedback for the Masters now, if you can't ask. Like if you had run the South Coast GT, you try to get targeted feedback. You can't say, hey, what rules pack should we use next year? Because if you put it on TWF, you're going to get 900 responses. It's just, buckshot, you can't do that. So we delegated and broke it down like a chain of command, where we have chair people that are supposed to vote in the best interests. And when the chairman and myself, the committee lead for the United States, we got together, I would basically be like the commissioner of the sports league. I wouldn't have any voting powers or anything like that, but I would collect all the proposals, what people want on the ballots, and effectively be the mediator and try to keep the peace amongst the regions. And then the chair people, they would have the real power. They would be the ones who vote what rules do what and how things go. So every region was well represented. I don't think there's a single region that didn't dislike their chairperson that was elected. I mean, of course, I did have a couple of people saying, hey, how did such and such get elected to chairperson? I didn't vote on that guy. I was like, well, did you even vote, or were you even aware of the process? And the answer is, the answer is usually no. I had no idea. Okay, then, I can't help you. Get involved with your community is the only thing I can suggest. So that's effectively how it came around. And that's basically how we divvied it up.
So it got divvied up to the individual chairman, and then they went back to their community in whatever method they want and decided on their qualification process, did they?
Yeah, exactly.
So it was a 50-player tournament, wasn't it, this year? Is that right?
Yeah, it was 50 players. Yeah, 5 regions. What we did was I targeted the 5 largest Warhammer fantasy communities that you hear about on podcasts, online, forums, and just what I knew from my days collaborating the rankings. And that's the one thing that did come in handy, because I had all the data. You could look on a map to where the majority of the tournaments are. I mean, you're not in the middle of like Nebraska, and it's not a hotbed of Warhammer activity. You know what I mean? So I could kind of coalesce the tournaments into rough regions of where they are. And when I talk to the leaders of those communities, they're like, yeah, I go to that tournament. And it's basically all the tournaments they travel to. And after X amount of miles, there's no cross pollination, because the black space in between, the dark space in between is just too much. So we took those islands of the Warhammer community across the U.S. and we had a chairman who was a well-liked person. Doesn't have to be the best general, doesn't have to be the most knowledgeable, but a person who's respected and a person who is people whose judgment people consider sound and they trust, and that's how we did it. The event, the chairmans are allowed certain leverage. It's a very old school form of government where, if it was like the United States, the main organizing committee were hands off. I'm not going to tell X region how they can do their selection process. I don't have any governance of that. You know what I mean? It's just that when they have to pay their dues or they have to vote. I'll stay on them for something like that. But aside from that, it's kind of like the ETC in a way. It's up to the individual countries how to decide their team, and that's as far as the ETC committee is going to worry about it. And pretty much that was that. We had 50 people. And the first 2 years, last year and this year, were both going to be held at a game store here in North Carolina, and that was just to basically see if we can get it off the ground. I think with the massive popularity surge that the event generated, we're not going to have any problem moving it, and eventually we're going to put it up for bids like the ETC process, and all the other regions will submit bids for running this event, and everyone will, the chairman will pick which region aligns best with U.S. hobby.
Sure.
So, that's roughly how it was. Everyone submitted their 10 players or chosen. Like the Texas guys submitted, or the South region submitted their 10 best guys who had overall rankings. They submitted 8 of those guys. Then they submitted the one guy that scored well in all their painting, and their one guy who won all the sportsmanship awards. That was their 10.
That's a good way of doing it, yeah.
Yeah. Whereas the West Coast guys took their 5 biggest GTs, and their overall winners automatically qualified, and the 1 through 3 of those tournaments made a 15-man qualifier to fill the last 5 slots.
Oh, nice.
The Mid-Atlantic and the Northeast had a ranking system similar to Ranking HQ, and then the Midwest did their first and second overall in their 5 biggest tournaments. So everyone did something different, and it worked for them. Because it's not my job or your job to tell people. That's like you guys, explaining to the French how they should select their ETC team. They're going to tell you to, take a hike.
Yeah,
it wouldn't work. Yeah.
So that's obviously, there's a lot of people involved. Did you have any social issues bringing all these people together initially before the event?
Yeah, I think it's pretty much well documented throughout the interwebs that there was a lot of animosity from the separate regions on the forums and on Twitter and a couple other things. And the leadership of the regions and the committee pretty much assumed after we got everyone together, broke bread together, had some beers together, it would dissolve itself. And effectively, that's what happened. And that was the great thing, because the event, once everyone was together, everyone had a fantastic time. But leading up to the event, there was a lot of whinging and a lot of, offhand insults and a lot of bickering. And, at the end of the day, that's none of that's necessary. It doesn't achieve anything. And that's why I don't personally, we've all gotten drug into the mudslinging every once in a while. I've probably said some stuff I probably shouldn't have. Somewhere, I'm sure it's documented on some forum somewhere. But at the end of the day, we got to really get pushed past that. And we were hoping, and we were sure that this event would help us do that.
Sure. Well, I think there was always going to be a little bit of that. It only takes anybody to look at the Warhammer forum and have a look at the ETC forum to see that when you bring that many people who are passionate about a hobby together in one place, it's always going to have a little bit of some issues. So we'll find out how, of course, that went shortly. So explain to the listeners briefly the format of the event. How many games, all that kind of stuff.
Right. Well, like I said, it was held in Raleigh, Durham, at a game store named Atomic Empire. Atomic Empire is a old furniture building, and they have a warehouse in the back and a massive gaming spot. They had separate rooms where we could do the streaming televised game one, a media room. So it was a good venue that was willing to hold it for absolutely free, and that was cool. From there, once we got, that was the easy part, because some regions didn't want to travel to other regions because there was still that level of kind of distrust, I don't think the Northeast guys would be excited to jump on a plane and go to the Midwest right around this period of time because they were arguing. And a lot of the Midwest guys probably would feel the same about going up to the Northeast. So we just picked, my region because I kind of helped push for it, and I was trying to form this thing, and I was willing to take the entire workload and not ask anyone for, any too much help on themselves. And they kind of gave it to me and basically said, well, here you go, see what you can do with it. And, so they trusted me with it, and I'm happy they did. But everything else, aside from maybe the venue, everything else was a committee decision. We selected the Swedish comp, if you're familiar, of course. Of course, we talked on the YouTube battle discussion, army thread thing.
Oh yeah, we should briefly mention that, I suppose. I mean, we'll talk about where the listeners can find further coverage on this, but I was invited onto something that you were hosting with Once Bitten 360 from YouTube to on camera of all things to talk about.
It was live too.
It was live. It was actually live at that time
from Heelan Studios.
Exactly, and that was good fun. And we were talking about the different matchups. So that's what you mentioned there. So yeah, sorry, carry on.
Right. Yeah. So, but we made a little changes, and see, this is the thing. Like the feedback we've received from this event already are people are talking about what we should do for next year. And my suggestion is, of course, contact your chairman and tell them what you want, because we're not going to take the buckshot approach to feedback because there's just too much of it. But what we did the 20-0 system, and we did the Swedish comp, but we removed the ceiling and the basement, where there was most Swedish comp is taken on between like 14-6 or 14-8, and you get up to 600 point head start or whatever, 150 points, for every point on comp you're ahead of them or something, right? We just removed that. We said the max bonus points you can get for comp is 800 points, and you can take whatever list you want. That fit within the 20-0 system.
I suppose that worked quite well with the sort of disparity in terms of how people play Warhammer around the US.
Exactly, and that's the only That's the only way it would have happened, because a lot of guys are pushing for the ceiling of 6 and the 14-6 range to be put in for next year. Well, I'm here to tell you, some dude who rocks out with his double A bomb or his Gracier, and or he rocks out with a list he likes to play that he paid the models for, he might not agree with that. He might want to play what he wants to play. And the thing is, that person is still a part of the national community. And if that person qualifies, that maybe his entire region likes to play like that. So it's you have to find a mutual ground that all the regions agree to. And it's just like, I'm sure, like the ETC, I'm sure they vote on everything, because I've seen them do it on the Warhammer forum.
Sure.
Right? So it's not like, well, we're just going to unilaterally say we're doing this, because we can't do that. It would work. It wouldn't work. It would fall apart quicker than anything else. So that's why that system was chosen. The Swedish system is flexible enough that a guy can play whatever he wants, provided he's willing to give the guy with the handgunners or give the guy with the mortar, here's 300-point head start. That's fine, because I want to take my Nurgle Demon Prince of Death.
Sure.
And it's up to the player. And the thing is, they know what they have going into it, and they know, and they can prepare. If they're not happy with their score, well, guess what? They can adjust it. And best of all, with the comp system, is it's not made by anyone in the United States. It's unbiased.
Yeah.
It's made from another gaming community that's in Scandinavia that doesn't give two squats about American Warhammer. So it was perfect. It fit all the criteria, and that's effectively why we use it, because people could play what they want to play. And the guys who like to play with some sort of control, the compy guys, there were certain guidelines that would give them a little head start or a little bump to a system if they want to build. Some guys like to field safe softer armies, like the Radigers that Wayne fields. You know what I mean?
Sure. No, I mean, I think that's a great a good way of using it, actually. So you took if anybody doesn't know what Swedish comp is, by the way, and hasn't heard of this before, we're not going to talk about it in detail. You can probably go back 4 or 5 shows and we talk about it a little bit more. But effectively, as Jerry alluded to, you get a score, and the higher it is, the better, because you start off. You compare your score to the other person's, and you start off with more victory points than them if you've got a higher score, basically. And as you say, but you guys you didn't restrict them to it has to be this score or this score. You could bring, someone did, one of my favourite lists at the event, the equivalent of like a netless Warriors army with a 0 score or 0.3, and then you had somebody on a sort of 17 odd,
17-9, the Iron Curtain.
Yeah.
Right. So that was that I think was one of the strongest features. I mean, what you'll get on forums is you'll get the vocal minority who will tell you that this isn't good for competitive Warhammer or that isn't good for competitive Warhammer. And it applies to a lot of things. Like,
pretty much everything.
yeah. For example, another one that happened were the building rules. There was a building on every table, and a couple buildings were unfortunate enough to have 2 buildings. Well, a lot of the super serious Warhammer players, they're like, well, the building rules are trash. We shouldn't play with them. Okay, well, yes, they aren't necessarily the best designed for competitive Warhammer. That is true. I concede that. But these two entire parts of the country, the entire part of the country likes to play with them because they're in the rule book. We can't tell them no, and even if you could, it's brought up to vote. So vote no if you don't want them, and the other guys will vote yes. So there's nothing that's I try to stress people with the buckshot feedback. All this stuff will go to vote, and the chairmen are supposed to vote how their population likes it, and guess what? If you would willingly not go to a tournament because they're using building rules, or someone can take his Brolock bus, then that's your agenda. But the thing is it has to be a communal thing that we all decide on together as a nation, because otherwise it wouldn't work, and it wouldn't really be something a national event, because it would just be some random tournament organizer like myself mandating the rules, and that's not how it's envisioned. Because eventually, I'm going to want out. I'm not going to want to run this thing forever. No. I might want to play. So we've got to set foundations to make it successful in the long term. Basically,
no, it sounds like a good plan, actually, and I think the Swedish probably is. As much as I'm not a massive fan of Swedish comp, it has been tried and tested all over the globe. Because it was so. It's not massively different. I mean, we had a what we call the WPS system back in the 90s, which was
that's what it was based off of. And our first tournaments here in the Mid-Atlantic, there were WPS. Though you would get the score added as a soft score at the end of the game. The only thing the Swedes did, I think, was they took it a step further and made it a multiplier for in-game benefits.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think that made the system stronger, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and it seems to be widely adopted. I think a lot of people, if you listen to a lot of podcasts and you see a lot of the internet media basically around Warhammer, I think people are slowly starting to kind of get fed up with it. But I think that's only because it's been used so much rather than anything else. So, but yeah, I think it was an appropriate choice when you're dealing with the kind of mixed opinions you were. So that's great. Yeah. So what were your expectations before the event? Did you have any?
I had high expectations, Dan, to be honest with you. I know we did our homework. We did the coverage. I had a very strong team in place. I had the ETC captain, a person who runs the longest running and largest tournament in the South region. The other chairmen were, runners, people who manage 100-man events. So we expected everything to go smoothly, and we expected it to be a media event for the United States that we just don't have. We have Adepticon, but Adepticon, even if you look at the Warhammer side of Adepticon, if you look at the nation and you look at their website, the Warhammer thing is like an afterthought for the convention. Yeah. It's like, oh, and here's the 3 halls for Warhammer, and let's talk about 40K.
Yeah, I've certainly felt that from an outsider getting there. It's quite hard to find the info, to be honest. But
whereas in the British scene, you have the South Coast GT, and then of course you have the wider European Team Championship that gets all the media, gets all the footage. Well, the thing is, the United States deserves that too, with the population and the size of the country and the number of people that are avid followers of the game. Why not have it? And sometimes it's got to be for the players, by the players, and that's basically what we did.
No, I think, and you guys did a good job of it. We'll talk about the coverage and the bits in a minute. But so, I mean, beforehand, you had people coming on YouTube, giving opinions on the lists. You can see all the lists in advance. There was tons of stuff that started to drum the enthusiasm up internationally, because it's like anything. I think you just need hype, and that's the best way to do it. So it was good. So let's talk about the event itself. So you guys got there. We should say as well, it's 5 games, which for me personally, I always like 6. I always find I personally feel, whether mathematical or not, it makes for a better winner. But when you've got people traveling so far, I can completely understand why there was only 5 games. I think it's a logistic nightmare.
Yeah, we had guys who were literally hopping into a cab, skipping the award ceremony to get the heck to the airport. And a lot of guys, it was torturous for them to get to the event. So one of the stories, I guess, leading up to the event is the Midwest guys. Like I guess that entire region of the country was going through a blizzard. And we had guys like Johnny Hastings stuck on tarmacs. We had the guys from Skullbro's Awesome, Brolian and Ruins Bruins. They got their flight diverted to Pennsylvania or Philadelphia, and they couldn't get a flight out, so they took a cab and drove 8 hours, or no, took a rental car and drove 8 hours. It was like guys were getting in at midnight, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, just to be, just to want to smack into a drunk Jerry who was like, "Let's shotgun some beers," So for us to have 100% attendance was a pretty big deal, and I was really excited about that. And that was so the struggles of getting it all together was the main issue off the table. But once we all got together, it felt like everyone knew each other for years. You know what I mean? And it was pretty darn cool, And once the dice started rolling, it was like any other Warhammer tournament.
Sure.
People were going at it, right?
And was there any shenanigans? I know some people like to hear about, either drunken shenanigans or some humorous events. Was there anything like that happened off the tables?
Oh, yeah, there were a couple. There's a guy named Drunk Dan Lindley from the South region, and this dude wasn't drinking at all Saturday because he got smashed, like on the tabletop. And this dude finally won a game, and he of course wants to challenge me and they sell beer at the venue, and he's like, I won a game finally. Let's drink some beer. And I was like, okay, dude. Grab some, 2 cans of Pabst Blue River or Pabst Blue Ribbon and meet me in the media room. So he goes and grabs those, and we shotgun him, and I 20-0 him. And he's up like, "I want a rematch." I was like, "Go grab 4 more cans and let's go to the media room." And Johnny Hastings was playing a game on table 4, like right outside the media room. I tried to yoke him up and bring him in there to drink with us. He's like, "Dude, I'm in a game, man. Come on," And it was just like
he could drink as well.
Yeah. Well, those guys, a lot of those Midwest guys didn't get too hammered, mainly because they got in so late. It was a struggle, and I'm really surprised it turned out. I haven't heard their coverage yet, but I'm fingers crossed that it turned out as well for them that I think it did, and it was received by everybody else, because a lot of people came in Thursday and we were just shotgunning beers and drinking and going out. And I mean, I think I Twittered at Friday morning. I woke up and I had no voice, and the event was still 2 days or a day and a half away, because I was out, hanging out with the guys from West Coast Hammer Time and crank calling their podcast and just, mocking them, and they're mocking me, and we were just making fools of ourselves. And Friday morning I was done, and once bitten, he's up there picking up Larry and Jarrett from the ETC team, bringing them to the hotel. So they're like got picked up at the airport and delivered to the hotel before I even woke up, and this was like stumbling downstairs at noon, and there they are, and they're like, "Well, we've got to get to our room." So at some point they do get their room, they get checked in, and we go immediately to the gas station to get more beer, and then we go to the venue, and then a lot of the other players are getting there, and we're setting up and everything. So it was a lot of drinking if you partaked in it. I think Hengel from the West Coast, myself, there was a couple people that did the rounds and actually completed. Like, I drank with every region except for maybe my own. I hung out with some of my guys, but I didn't really drink with them because to me it was something to build the community and meet the other guys. And I hung out at least one night with each of the different regions, making a fool of ourselves. So it was good times. It was just you had to be out there and ready to get hammered, So it was pretty good. Oh, and another thing, I think we all went to dinner one night, and I guess a car full of drunk people. Unfortunately, where we were eating dinner at this barbecue place, there were cops there, and they watched this group of dudes just walk in, stumbling drunk. And no sooner we pulled out that the cops pulled one of the cars over, and I guess they tested John, who was driving for the DUI, and fortunately, like if they, God forbid, picked the vehicle I was in when I was driving, I wouldn't say I was drunk at the time, but we've all had some drinks, so I might end up locked up. The head tournament organizer in jail. So it was just one of those things where that kind of, like, those guys in particular, I know, went immediately to the hotel because they took that as a sign from God. They're like, you know what, we escaped. None of us went to jail. Let's go back to the hotel and drink there rather than going to the bars and stuff.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I always encourage people to do that. I like, when I go away to tournament weekend, I always try and get there on the Friday as early as possible to sort of just enjoy the social and everything else. And I know, like, when we come into Adepticon, we're coming Wednesday, so we can, have the time to just chat and chill before playing Warhammer. So no, I'm glad some people got in early. I think that's the way forward.
That's definitely the key.
Good. So what about on the table then? Any wild stories of the event as it went through?
I mean, there was two major storylines. The first one was, for whatever reason, anytime someone casts a spell, you're guaranteed a dimensional cascade. I mean, in the first round, I think like 4 or 5 games ended the first turn or two. It was just that event where guys were just going into the hole. And they're like, yep, this game's over. So there was far more 20-0s than you would see at a traditional table tournament. And I don't know if people were just, quote-unquote, going for it or exactly what happened. But it really ended a lot of people's events really early. I mean, you take a 20-0 game 1 or 2, then, you know, you're there for fun now. And we're there for fun anyway, but, you know, that takes the competitive edge off. And even as rounds 3 and 4 and the results were coming in, and I was at the stage with Dan, my tournament organizer, my data entry guy, and he was like, God, Jerry, these 20-0s are still coming in, you know, and it was just guys were going for it, you know, a lot. And that could be a conflict of how different regions play, you know. And then the other main story, of course, was the Northeast guys. They just pounded the heck out of the rest of the country. I think going into the event, when we all looked at the list together, we all kind of assumed that, hey, these guys figured out the puzzle the best, and then they proved it on the tabletop. So aside from that, I mean, there's a million other stories that happen to a million people, and a lot of people have their bad beats that they received. But I don't think there was no heated moments like that happened at Adepticon a couple years back. There was nothing so negative that would, although you couldn't tell by going to the Wargamers USA forum because stuff gets blown out of proportion, you know, with the vocal minority. But there were no real big issues, and for that I'm thankful, you know. And I don't know if we consider it luck or consider it the goodwill between the players, but I think we dodged the bullet, and I think I think the results and everyone just played the game.
No, definitely, and you think that. Did you have any problems? Not problems, but did you see any regional differences with the way people play on the table? Or was it fairly standard Warhammer players play Warhammer?
No, there were huge differences. You know, like the West Coast guys, they play in a win-lose-draw system. So these dudes go for home runs, meaning if they're down and turn 6 is approaching, it's like playing chip poker. They're putting all the chips in. I'm going for it. You know what I mean? I got Jack 9. I'm waiting on the river. I'm pushing it in. So that would mean taking the super long charges with lances. That would mean, you know, double charging this critter with my 2 chariots that probably have no chance of killing it, just to hope to get one guy to break it and run it down, because they win, lose, draw. It doesn't matter how much you win by or how much they lose by. So that was difficult for them to play. You know, a lot of the other regions were taking unit types that would seem inoptimal to the other regions, but we're effectively doing well with them, like Meal Vermilion. I think it's a Dutch guy from the Midwest, and we called him the Cossack because, you know, I was just thinking he was Russian the entire time. And this dude, he took a mortar, and he was just boxing people up. A dude finished 10th place, and he had I don't know if you were the one who did that. No, it was the one with Joe Rogers, and Joe Rogers was from his region, and on the YouTube thing, Joe Rogers was like, I don't know what Meal's doing. You know, that was the analysis for his list, and this dude was on table 4 with his mortar and his handgunners at the U.S. Masters, you know, going into game 5. And you know, to me, top 10. Well, he tied for 10th, and to me, that's great, you know, because you know I told him, man's got to take 2 mortars next year.
Set up the ante.
Double up. But I'll tell you, the results of that mortar, over the weekend, it blew itself up twice. Other times it didn't have angles until it could get run down by fast cav, and it did kill something, but all weekend it killed 1 pink horror. Horrific. You know, he's like, yep, not taking that again. But, you know.
No, what is it? I've been listening to some more American podcasts recently. What is it? The phrase? You know, he's got to bring the heat. Is that what you got to say? Got to bring the heat.
Bringing the heat. That means it can mean 2 things. It can mean like bring the heat as in list, like you're bringing the most powerful list, or you know, it's a figure of speech like you know, when you're not necessarily, I mean, I know this is a family-friendly show, so I can't really curse, but it's like when you're talking junk and someone says something funny or something that can be viewed as, like talking mess to another person. He's like, oh, like so-and-so is bringing the heat with that type of talk. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's how they rock out, man. That's just the American way.
I think I need a T-shirt with that for Adepticon. Bring in the
We
heat.
should.
Yeah.
Someone buy this man a T-shirt. We'll send you one.
Definitely. Good. Okay, doke. So, no, that's always interesting because I know from the ETC, with all the different Europeans, we certainly have differences on how people play on the table. So it's always interesting to know. So let's talk about the winners and the riders then. What were the awards and who won what?
Winner. Well, let's go backwards. I guess in third place was Josh Hatkin from Henkin from the Northeast. He was he was the leader after 4 rounds. He was 9 points ahead of the competition, and he was playing that typical copy paste demon list. But I think he had a soul grinder or something. So it was a little different. But I'm not exactly sure. I didn't watch too much of the footage of the event because I was running around like a maniac.
Sure.
And then second place was another ETC guy, Matt Cassidy, and he was playing the copy paste demon list. And basically, the winner who took it home was Justin Berge. He played Nick Hall, and they both got 20 nils against their other opponents on like table 7 or 8. They both jumped to table 3. And the tables 1 through 3 were the only people really to have a shot because the Cossack was on table 4 playing Jake Martin from the Northeast, who just lost on table 1. But I think the loss put him too far back, and the Cossack really didn't get in gear until later in the tournament. So table 4 was just a touch too far back, and the top 3 tables were Demon, Warriors of Chaos, Dark Elf, and then, of course, the High Elf Warriors of Chaos. And Justin Berge just utterly destroyed Nick Hall. And, Nick's a good guy, and that just wasn't the best match for him. He just lost all his little toys to shooting. He had a very balanced Warriors of High Elf army. It was like something you'd pull out of like a battle report. Hey, 2 bolt throwers, 2 units of archers, 2 units of infantry. You know what I mean? And it just smashed people's back door in, for lack of better term. And he just snatched the prize, took it out of their teeth. So good for him. Good for him.
Definitely.
He got the dice when he needed them, and he knew how to play his army very well. And he smoked 20-0, 2 people on the top eight tables the last 2 rounds. So that's very strong.
Cool. Come from the middle of nowhere. So no, that's great. Yeah, I mean, we should say we've probably covered a point here that the table 1 you guys put on, or the guys at the venue via you guys streamed live on Twitch TV every game on table 1, bar the first one where you had some technical difficulties, but I still managed to get the first 3 turns of that before it all disappeared. But and that's what we're talking about. There was 100 odd people at one point watching this game. I know myself, Ben Curry from the Bad Dice podcast, were all in the chat room talking about the game as we're there, and also talking some random junk in the slow bits. I mean, the joke we're making about the slow bit is they didn't finish the game, and there was a lot of sort of procrastinating going on and decision making, and we had lots of downtime, so there's a lot of people in the chat room. But again,
you get a bunch of war gamers talking Warhammer. They're going to joke. They're going to joke around. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so it was good. It was really good fun, and that was one of the big things for me. Are these games now available to watch afterwards?
Yep. We have a consolidated media thread on Wargamers USA. Basically, you go to the Wargamers USA and you go to event coverage for the 2014 Masters, and there'll be a thread that's this consolidated media thread, and that will have everything to the pre-event with its announcement on Garage Hammer, all the way to the post-event where this interview will be, along with and all the interviews and media in between. It's probably got about 25 videos on there from different outlets, from like Heelanhammer, Ohio Hammer, Bad Dice, Once Bitten's YouTube channel, the footage at the event, interviews with the ETC team. We really hit it with the full media blitz. Now, whether or not it lived up to people's expectations remained to be seen. We had some serious issues with broadband, with uploading broadband videos during the event. And I was actually tweeting with Ben Curry in the middle of the event. I was absolutely frustrated because I put everything in place, and the internet gods decided to put their thumb on me and said it wasn't happening. So we had to switch the Wi-Fi to private at the venue because everyone was tweeting. And it was just kind of like, I guess someone said you guys had a similar incident in Polish ETC where the internet was just
ETC,
terrible.
Yeah.
So we got firsthand experience with that now. So hopefully we'll try to find a way to be prepared next year. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, I think that's always the tough one. A lot of people were asking myself and Ben Curry in the chat rooms saying, when are you guys going to do this at UK events? And I said, like the South Coast, for example, we couldn't do it. We just, they're physically, the technology is not there in the venue to have the internet speed and everything we'd need to do it. So, obviously taken apart, I was going to say one of my points really was big well done to all the players that put themselves out there on table one, because it is, I quite like playing Warhammer with an audience. It's quite good fun, but then I'm kind of used to people, listening to me and looking at what I'm doing. Whereas I think if you're not used to that and you've got a camera pointing at you and people making comment on you, it could be quite nerve wracking, I would have thought. Yeah. So what about the painting, from the painting perspective? Who won, and what was it they won with?
Well, Best Painted, we did that a little unusual, Dan. What we did was we had everyone who wanted to be nominated for Best Painted to put their armies on a random table in the middle of the venue, and the players could go around and select the ones they like. And the 3 armies that got the most player votes all got the equivalent of 2 judge votes. And then the 7 staff members, the 7 judges, would go around and pick their favorite armies, and they would each get 1 vote. So they could pick 3 armies, and the players got to pick 3 armies. So if you and I were a judge and we picked one army and the players picked that army too, that army got 4 points. So we tabulated the favorite army like that, and of course it was unrelated to their battle score or anything like that. It wasn't like a combined overall total. So basically that's just how we decided the award. And we did have maybe 6 finalists, 6 people put their army up. I do know a lot of the people whose painting I respect, like Larry Matola. I was trying to con him and get him to put his army up there, and he wouldn't do it. I mean, there's no cost to do it. You just put it up there because you're already at the event. And another guy, the Dragon Master, Robert Brandon, and Robert kind of suggested, he's like, well, I know when I'm punching above my weight, so he didn't want to get in there with the big boys, And basically, of the 6 or 7 armies that went up there, we selected. We got 3 pretty much runaway picks, and we had one of our media guys, Jake, interview the guys, just like a small 1 or 2 minute interview throughout the day, have them tell us a little about their army and show like highlights of their army. And I think that's what you said, Wayne was watching a little earlier, and that's pretty neat, So in 3rd place, Peyton Chipman won. He's a young guy, and his dad did the cool thing. He's probably like 17, 18, and he's from the Northeast, and his father drove him all the way to the event, basically so he could make sure he got there. And that to me is pretty cool,
Definitely,
like
yeah.
When I was at that age, my dad would be like, yeah, figure it out, And,
yeah, my dad didn't even want to take me on a Sunday to football, so
yeah, catch the bus. And the thing is, I spoke to his dad for a while. His dad was cool, man. I was running the event, so I was in between, and he was looking at some of the armies, and we were kind of talking about the different armies, and so I was really happy to see Peyton win that one, and he had this great Empire army, and the showcase model of this Empire army was his Empire Griffin, and he took a Griffin to the Masters just to make sure he brought that Griffin. I don't know for sure, but he knew that Griffin was an award-winning piece, and he put that thing right in that list and went for it. And sure enough, he came home with an award, so that was pretty cool.
Good news.
The other two, one was Ryan Smith from Texas. And he had an Orcs and Goblin army, and he won 2nd place. And it came to tie breaks for player votes. And these guys got all the general votes. Like every one of the judges voted for him, and they both got the 2 player votes from the from the players, right? So it came to who got the most player votes as the tiebreaker, and it was still pretty close on that too. And it was one of those. His technical skill was very, very good, and you could actually see it on the media coverage thread. And I'm actually going to go back and look at some of the armies myself because, as you know, when you're running around, it wasn't the largest tournament I've run, but it was the one with the most facets, with trying to get the media up and order vendor food trucks and dealing with the T-shirts and all that good stuff. So it was just, I felt. You were busier than you would normally be, so I missed out on a lot of them. But that army in particular was very, very good. And the winner, and it was kind of unsurprising to a lot of the people at the event, was good old Johnny Hastings from Point Hammered podcast with his Minotaur or Ogre army that's converted to look like Minotaurs. Have you seen this army, Dan?
I have, yes. It's really, really good.
Yeah. So he took it home pretty convincingly in expectations. A lot of people wouldn't know how close it was at the end, because at the very beginning, when we were tabulating scores, Dan and I looked at each other and we were like, why do we even bother? We should they're playing for second place. And then as more scores got submitted, the orc player slowly closed the gap. But in the end, you couldn't take it away from Johnny. I mean, the best army at the Masters. It was just a great, great piece of work, man. And he took the trophy down.
Excellent. And can we see these armies online anywhere? I know
Yep.
we can probably see them somewhere.
Yeah. On like I said, the first thing I did, and this was mainly because I think it was Jack Armstrong and Curry. They were both on one of the tweets, and they're like, "What's going on with the media coverage on Saturday when we were having the broadband issues?" And the media coverage is one of the things I was so hyper on getting it to be a success, like really like building the hype, like you said earlier, and basically. After that experience with the broadband and like interviews we interviewed like Thursday night and Friday were coming out way after the event, and I was like, oh god, people aren't going to want to know about this stuff now. The event's over. So basically we were consolidating a lot of the interviews into like organizer interviews and the painting interviews, and we put it all on the consolidated event media thread on Wargamers USA. And yep, all the painting armies should be up there. There should be like a little 2 minutes session with the army and with the painter of the army where our roving reporter stopped him and tried to get something out of him. I don't know how many of them really talked, but he tried his best anyway.
Brilliant. It's something's better than nothing, I think, in that case. So no, it's great. And I'd encourage anybody to check out that kind of coverage and the coverage of the event as a whole. I certainly enjoyed it. I think watching the games over the weekend, I had them on in the background. I had some rare hobby time actually, so I had them on in the background.
Right, that's what I heard. I mean, and of course, because when you're at the event or when you're within the bubble, just like with you guys at the ETC, I imagine you don't know how many people are following it until you get out of that, out of that bubble, and you get back to wherever you're from, or your home, your state, or your home country. And that was pretty neat. The interest in the event as a whole. I think we did a lot of good things for a first time type coverage. Like, I mean, of course, we can't hold a matchup to like the ETC, which is like literally 10 times the size of this event, if not 20 times, with 500 players or whatnot. But I mean, for a skeleton staff of about 6 guys, I think we did okay. So
it definitely appeared that way from the outside. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I liked the final touch. The guy who's in the media coverage was excellent because he kept an eye on the chat room all the time. So there was a time, I know we mentioned it in the last show actually that's gone out, that myself and Ben Curry and a lot of other people were watching the last game, and we were chatting between ourselves of what was dead in the dead pile, and we asked him, can you put a camera on the dead pile for us? And he picked his mobile camera up, looked on the dead pile. Anytime we wanted to see something, you could just ask him, and he'd try and get an angle of it. So that was really good. It was kind of interactive for us sitting back here, and then the nice touch at the end. You could see sort of like he had the camera up, and you could just see everyone gathering for the award ceremony, chatting and drinking, and then obviously the award ceremony itself with you doing your presentation, and seeing the people come up for the raffle prizes was a bit funny. Just some of the way some of them strutted up there. It's quite, I don't know. It's just good. Yeah. It was good to see, because it's the kind of thing we see all the time at UK tournaments, but it's nice when you're just sitting there watching it, chilling out. So.
Yeah, well, I think it was. I mean, I was probably pretty flagrantly drunk at the point of the award ceremony, making a fool of myself. I haven't watched it myself because I'm almost cringing thinking of watching it, to be perfectly honest with you. And on some of the videos, I mean, it was one of those things where we just drank the venue dry. I think they started with 8 kegs, and I took a picture after the whole place shut down, and there was like 17 beers left in the cooler, and 7 of the kegs were floating. So it was just like a horde of locusts descended on that place and drank them dry, and I know at one point I was interviewing, I think it was the ETC team, and literally I missed my mouth after an interview question. The beer spills on my face, and everyone starts laughing. And I look at the camera guy. I was like, "Keep rolling, let's go!" And it was ridiculous. I've been cringing to watch that one too.
Yeah. No, I didn't. It didn't look too bad from where I was sitting. So it was fine. It was good. It was good. So, I mean, and do you have a personal message to players? I mean, how did you find that everybody who attended it, were they all taking good spirits? Was it good? The overall thing, it seemed from an outside perspective like a really nice buzz. Was that what the case was?
Yeah, I would like to a couple of things. I mean, a couple of people made there's some things we can improve, of course. The 2 major things in my mind that stick out that need to be improved are, of course, the at least next year, where it will be at the Atomic Empire venue again. We need to find a way to ensure that the broadband holds up. Like I said, we were there, and I was so frustrated because we couldn't upload videos, because you're just spinning your wheels. Why are you bothering recording when you know the video is not it's going to take 500 minutes to upload like 10 minutes of video? So, and that's exactly on that same tweet. Curry was like, "Hey, go take the computer to somebody's house and start uploading it." So we did his advice. We took laptops, dropped them at the hotel, because no one's on the hotel's Wi-Fi until the evening time when everyone gets back. So we were uploading videos like that. So the broadband was a big one from the organizer's point of view. The only hole where we failed on the playing on the rules judging was perfect for the most part. I mean, you can't really get stuff like that 100% perfect, but I think Keith and John did as close as they could. But the terrain, we needed world-class for terrain if we're going to be a world-class event. And needless to say, it wasn't there. And that is a cultural thing, because even speaking to the other regions, they have great terrain because of how the region's set up. Like where we're from in the Mid-Atlantic, all the clubs have the club terrain, right? And we play in free venues, these giant, enormous game stores that it's 100% free. So if you brought your terrain, there's a chance it could go missing or end up as the store's terrain. So for the most part, we just relied on using the store's terrain and brought some of our terrain sometimes, whereas like in the Midwest and Texas and the Northeast, these regions don't have giant venues. They've got to play in hotel ballrooms. They've got to play in moose lounges or whatever. They got playing school gymnasiums, So I know the UK, you guys handle it by, hey, everyone bring 3 pieces of terrain, right?
Yeah, well, a lot of them do, yeah.
Yeah, those other regions, they've had a decade of having terrain, and they just built their own. So it doesn't matter if their venue kicks them out. Well, guess what? We'll just go to the next venue. We'll have all the tables and the terrain. Let's go. Well, ours, there wasn't that capital expense of having it. So I brought my club terrain, and my club terrain's nice, but it's enough for 4 tables, and some of the other guys did too. So that was something we overlooked. And we've got a lot of plans to fix that. And the easiest solution is to use some of the budget for the next year to one of the major TOs that lives close enough, and for him to transport his tournament quality terrain down. Because if we waste too much of the budget and actually purchase terrain for the event, we'd have to store it and ship it to wherever it goes when it starts rotating. Whereas it's staying in the Mid-Atlantic next year, right? And then the year after that, if it gets voted to go to the Northeast or the South or the West Coast, a lot of those guys already have the terrain because how their GT community came up, because they've never had the opportunity to play. I mean, if you had to play for free at a store all the time, you wouldn't be too inclined to build, 50 tables worth of terrain.
No, of course not.
So it was a cultural thing, and it was unexpected, and that's not what we saw. And that was a big disappointment to a lot of people. And of course, when other people are disappointed, I'm disappointed too. So that's something we're going to improve on.
It looked good on table 1, though. I got to say, the little elven head thing that was on there.
That was a Dream Spirit Studios. That was our one of our sponsors, and they provide the table 1 terrain. And unfortunately, it was a little difficult to play on. That was the complaint I got, because I think they went a little overboard, knowing it would be on table 1 and be streaming. And of course, we didn't imagine we'd get 150 people up there at once. But so it was pretty cool in that regard. But they certainly. It wasn't very practical for from the feedback I got from all the guys on table 1 over the weekend.
No, it looked fine to play on. I think there was only one. I saw a couple of discussions over when there was a hill and there was a question mark over. They hadn't discussed whether the actual there's an elven helmet, big massive statue, and they hadn't discussed whether that was actually blocking or whether it was just to pretend as it wasn't there because it was a hill. I think that was about the only thing I saw. But it really did look good on camera. Actually, the paint job.
Yeah, I think it was set up more for like a White Dwarf battle report than it was for practically playing on,
competitive gaming.
So yeah, exactly. So what tournament has been perfect? Nothing.
No.
I don't think any plan goes according to plan, like the saying goes, after it starts. And we certainly got places we need to improve on, and terrain, and then of course broadband. I think are the 2 major ones that I would like to, get out there and really make happen.
Definitely. But it certainly looked like a great event from the outside. So what was your personal highlight from the event?
Yeah, well, my personal highlight, and I will tell you, and then of course, I'll give you what I think and my opinions to tell everyone else out there in Warhammer land. The coolest thing, and this is what I will tell people from wherever on the globe, in your communities, you have a lot of name players. You have a lot of guys who finish on the top tables. And I don't remember who I was talking to, but it was probably in the middle of round 2. And I just took a second. Of course, you have one of those drunken epiphanies, right? And I was sitting there, beer in hand, and I look around, and you see like Johnny Hastings talking to, Mike Hengel from, Leadership 2, and then you've got like the ETC captain discussing a rules dispute with one of the named players over here, and then you've got like Nabrolian, and you've got basically all the American personalities sitting around. You got Once Bitten from his YouTube channel talking to Kevin Bruins, and you look around and you're like, wow, it's like and then you've got ETC guys. You've got it's like a who's who of United States Warhammer if you're on the United States community scene. Now, of course, some of your listeners probably kind of like the same way, they won't recognize who any of these people are, but to me, as strange enough as it wasn't being a 100% success or, all this other stuff. That was probably the coolest moment for me when I looked around and, I clapped somebody on the back and I said, you know what? We actually did it, man. We actually put it together. And that was kind of the best feeling.
I think that's, we certainly had that the first year, for example, we did the South Coast, and pretty much every year as it got bigger, we always have that sort of thing when it's all packed away, or when it's, normally when it kicks off game 1, you got, 200 odd people in a room, and we go up and there's like a balcony, and anyone who's seen some of the shots from the South Coast will have seen us taking pictures from it, and it's that moment where it hits you, you're like, yeah, all right, we did do a good job here, it's all come together, people are in the same room, and they're having a good time. And that's that. I think that's a tournament organizer thing as well as everything else that goes with it. So, but you're right. I'd imagine that must have been a great feeling to have everyone. I mean, we certainly found it when we had last year at the South Coast. Johnny Hastings, you mentioned there. They did the trip over. We had Germans, Norwegians, Americans. And this year we've got. And Swedes, and this year we've got an international contingent as well, and it's quite nice, to get everybody in the same room, all about the hobby they love. So it's good.
Yeah, I imagine a lot of people will have that feeling at Adepticons, at European Team Championships, at events where they just see a lot of people that they want to, a lot of people that they've heard about on podcasts, a lot of people they see who post on internets, and at least in the grand tournament side of things, they see a lot of people whose strategy they read on the different forums and stuff like that. So it was definitely cool seeing the entire community come together like that. And speaking of the community, of course, we made our own forum for the United States Warhammer community, and it's Wargamers USA, and we'd like people to know to come visit that if you're in America and you follow Warhammer. Of course, we've gone through our challenges with that forum because there's such a huge variance of people from different parts of the country, and I'd like to. I think we're past that. I mean, since the first Masters, we've really improved the communications between the different regions, and we've actually installed a code of conduct where before we were kind of lenient because maybe some people didn't get each other's humor, and now we're going to really tighten it down. I think now that everyone's played together, everybody has the common dream to go. I would hope everyone who went to the event was ecstatic. I think the feedback we got. The global recognition, the feedback from the Midwest players, from the Northeast, from the Mid-Atlantic, from the South, it was all very, very, very positive. And the unfortunate side effect about things like forum, like I'm sure you've seen it on the Warhammer forum, is all the good feelings, all the hype can be dispelled very, very quickly by a bunch of people that either had beef with someone else or they want to focus on one of the negatives, and that's what we're trying to stop. The event's too successful to stop now, and we've all met each other, and I think we'll all have the community goal to make sure the trolling, for lack of a better word, doesn't take over the United States community. I mean, all the other communities, it looks like, you never hear about that on the UK scene, and it looks like everyone else has gotten past it. And I think that's just the next logical step for our country too. Fingers crossed.
No, I agree. And I think that I suppose it's kind of a thankless task you've got, but certainly from an outside perspective, I'd say thanks for the effort of putting the event on. I know from a tournament organiser's perspective, it's hard work. In my experiences, the ETC of herding people and dealing with the wider community, it can be challenging at times, but I'm sure that they do appreciate it somewhere.
Yeah, it's the worst. I mean, I like I was talking to you before. You're just like, why do I do this to myself? It's like you said, absolutely thankless, and there is nothing on the planet you can do to get a couple people to just simmer down on any type of badgering they might have, whether no sooner did the event end that the southern region was in a full-fledged civil war with the players from the South who didn't attend the event griping that their region performed so badly. Not 12 hours later, it was just where do these people get this stuff, and it's unfortunate that it happens, but at the end of the day, you got to just moderate it the best you can. You got to hope people want the same expectations for a national community that you do, and just take it one day at a time. I mean, I don't think there's any easy way to make it happen. Kind of sucks.
No, yeah, I'm sure it is hard work, but I think from an outside perspective, it's really good to see. I know fans of the game like me who listen to a lot of most of the Warhammer media, spend their time on forums, sit behind mics talking to people about it. You get these little hubs of Warhammer, like you say, who's and you kind of feel like you know people from a distance. And in this particular example, a little bit like the ETC, you see all these people together getting to play off against each other and who's who of Warhammer, and it's a really good event. So I certainly found it fascinating from the outside. So yeah, thanks again for sticking it on, and I'm sure the listeners will be keen to hear how this goes in the next year when you add a couple more regions in there.
Yeah, well, me too, I guess. I mean, hopefully I won't be too drunk throughout the proceedings because I might take the liquor. Who knows?
Yeah. I wouldn't blame you for going to drink for the kind of issues you've had to deal with over this one. So
yeah, the abuse.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. The internet abuse. But no, it's great. So thanks for coming on, Jerry. And do you want to plug anything while you're on here, or anything else you want to cover?
No, not. I think that was pretty much it. I appreciate you giving me the time to talk about the event. Like I said, it was a huge success. I'd like, if anyone wants to talk to someone who actually went to the event, please do. I think everyone had a great time. Just again, to the U.S. community, let's start focusing on the positive and stop the stuff that doesn't really do anything for the community. I mean, I think it's the next step forward, and hopefully people will take that message and let's run with it.
Good. And I think finally, we will just. I'm going to ask you while you're on here, being American.
Sure.
Have you ever been to Adepticon?
No, I haven't, and I think Adepticon is something I'd like to do eventually.
I think it falls really poorly on my tournament schedule here locally in my region, I honestly, I just never get online quick enough to buy the tickets. It's like the South Coast GT, you have to really be dedicated to going even a month or 2 months prior to the tickets going on sale.
Sure.
Right? Because if you don't, guess what? You don't get the tickets. It's not like something where you can just get in a couple days later. They're just 15 minutes and they're gone. So I haven't. But I have gone to a tournament similar to that, but not to that scope, like the Nova Open, and it's kind of neat because it's like an accumulation of everything hobby, from my understanding.
No, I mean, we're really looking forward to it, just for a different perspective on seeing what people do and meeting a lot of listeners. We've had contact through the show and everything while we're out. It's going to be great fun. But you've obviously seen more than anybody now the widest range of how Warhammer's played there. And have you got any tips or anything that what should we expect when we come out?
I think you will probably be fine, Dan. Wayne, I'm not too sure about. He'll probably rock out with some. I mean, who never knows? I mean, people play some wacky stuff, and when you get into a field the size of Adepticon, you'll have the players that come in trying to win, and then you'll have players who are bringing the stuff they like to bring, like I sometimes do, and Wayne does. So I think you'll be fine. I think Ben and Ben played in it last year, and he did quite well against some pretty named players. I think he finished 9th or something in a 150-man field, and Mark Wildman actually finished right below him. And those guys are both established tournament veterans. So I think your style of play you're well suited to adapt to the Adepticon style. But the positive thing is Wayne at that same very tournament will also get the type of tournament experience he's looking for.
Sure.
Provided you don't run into a jerk or something, which can happen anywhere.
Yeah, no, that's true. But no, I think I'm very much looking forward to it. I mean, the regular listeners of the last couple of shows, I know I've been fighting with myself on what to take, and I'll probably end up taking a suboptimal lizard man list just because I kind of fancy taking my lizards.
Take Lore of Death. That'll balance it out, right?
Yeah, that fixes everything. Yeah.
Hey, you can 6 dice in this event, so you can just go crazy if you really want to.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, apart from the ETC, we can normally 6 dice here, so I'm kind of used to it. I'm good. I'll make sure I roll lots. So yeah, good. Well, thanks for the tips. Hopefully, I know I've spoken to a few different Americans on it, and people are saying, Wayne shouldn't worry too much about bringing something hard. There's going to be apparently quite a lot of hard lists and things. So,
well, there's going to be a variety there. I mean, oh yeah, that's right. He's not bringing his Radiggers. He's bringing Warriors, isn't he?
No, he's going to bring Skaven now. Yeah. Again, it's a recent change back, but I think
I thought he was selling out for a second there.
Yeah, I think we both decided that since the show's been going, they're the armies that we are known for playing. So we thought we'd bring those with us. So
yeah, you got to bring your trademark army, exactly.
And that was really what it is. It just means we have to paint a lot. So, we've been on that in the last couple of weeks. But no, it's going to be all good, so I enjoy it. So, Jerry, thanks for joining us on the show. And as I say, hopefully if this goes off again next year and you're still involved, I'd like to have you back and we'll chat some more for sure.
Well, I'll definitely be involved. I don't know if I qualify again this year. I might just hand it off to one of the regional chairmen to run. But then again, I'm really OCD and really wanting it to be a success. So, who knows? I mean, I guess we'll just see when we get there. But we do have 3 more regions joining: the Pacific Northwest, the Mountain region, and then, of course, the deep South. And they're coming on as full members. And they won't have as much pull on the rules queries and stuff like that the first year, just so we make sure that they actually follow through and show up, which I think they will, because I think the groundswell for this event is building. But next year it's going to be bigger or better, and hopefully both. So we'll see. Fingers crossed.
Good news. Well, I look forward to seeing it, and hopefully we'll be able to give it a bit of coverage as well. So thanks again for joining us, mate. Cheers.
Great. I appreciate it. Thanks, Dan.
Okay, and we're back. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the interview there with Jerry. I certainly felt like the US Masters was a massive success, as I talked about during that interview, and I look forward to seeing how that gets portrayed, and the feedback and everything on the event is still sort of coming in, and just I think there's going to be a lot of coverage and enthusiasm for it next year. So there you go. We talked about rankings just before the interview, so there you go. There's another viewpoint on selection and how to make a sort of a coming together of the different players from different regions. So Wayne, Beardy Weedy Weeks, what have you been up to?
I've been trawling through doing the bases for my Skaven for Adepticon. I've finished 70, and I've base coated another 93. I've got 220 to do altogether. So from that it sounds kind of like, I've only got another sort of 50 to go, but I've really hit the wall because there's 5 layers just to paint the bases to the brown that I want. And then obviously I've got to do the static grass and the leaves, and they've all got to be like glued on individually, as anyone's done it knows. It's just time consuming. And there's no time for hobby bobs at the moment, obviously, because we've got a deadline for Adepticon, so we have to get our armies finished. And I really want to start my VC. So I just got to get through these bases and get them done, and then work out how I'm going to pack it all. I really want to take that Screaming Bell, but it's massive.
That might not fit with the way we were discussing about how to take it. I think your existing one will definitely fit quite easily. So.
Yeah, I'm trying to do like the repairs and repainting stuff that I'm not happy with. There's a lot of stuff I'm not happy with, but it's just time constraints. I'm just not going to get it done how I want it to be done. So I'm redoing a couple of the warp lightning cannons.
Oh yeah,
I made that sound like I've got loads of warp lightning cannons. The 2 that I'm taking. And then I want to add some more figures to it, like some extra crew and on the base and stuff, just to make it a bit more interesting. And then the slave unit fillers, I'm adding some bits to those just to bulk them out a bit. But yeah, I've got the problem with the packing is I've got quite a lot of sort of like mini dioramas almost for like unit fillers and stuff like that. And I want to obviously get it to the states without having to repair it once I'm there. I think I can do it. It's just finding the right size box that's obviously going to be okay for hand luggage.
Yeah, international travel is always a bit of a conundrum as to what's the best thing to do. But there's lots of options out there. I'll probably be battle foaming it. I know a few people have been helping me out on Twitter with some queries. Being a UK person, getting hold of all the battle foam range is quite hard work, I think, sometimes, because some of the stuff that is on the US site isn't on the UK site, as I found out at the weekend when I was tweeting about it. So it's going to be quite confusing because they've got such an awesome range of stuff. But I'll be battle foaming it on hand luggage. You'll be packing it tight like I've been at the ETC a couple of times.
I mean, the bag you've got sounds perfect for me, but I think works out, you said about £91.
Yeah, it's about £100. Yeah,
about £100. I just can't sort of fork that out at the moment. But yeah, I mean, that bag's spot on.
And it also depends if you get the use out of it. I mean, the reason I spent that kind of money was because I knew I wasn't going to do it once. I've done 4 ETCs with it, plus Ireland, Denmark, and all the rest of it. So I've used it a lot, so it was well worth the money. But if,
literally, I'll be paying out. I mean, people might say, but you're getting your army there in one piece.
But you can do it
so
the way
it's worth it.
You can do it the way you're thinking of doing it. Because I've done that as well, where you just tightly pack it on, carry on, and it'll be fine. It won't be a problem. It won't be a problem.
Yeah.
So that's good. And from my point of view, exactly the same as you, Adepticon, I said on the last show, and I say it again, I am now, I think I was about 80%, was I, last time, convinced I was going to take lizards, and then after recording that, we got off the mics, and you'd convinced me to take vampires, because I was being silly on the amount I got paint.
Yeah.
And I was convinced about that. I went, so Wayne went, I came, swapped all my stuff around, put the vampires, I needed to paint on the desk, got up the next morning, and a few people on Twitter have seen my tweets about me just harassing my missus about what should I take. I says to her, me and Wayne had a good chat last night, going to take vampires, and she just sighed at me and went, you're going to regret it. And then I was like, do you know what, you might be right. So I've been back on so since that time, so this is obviously near 3 weeks ago by the time I'm recording this now, I've been hardcore in the Lizardmen. I've got the Mersey Meltdown. By the time you're listening to this, it's probably the weekend, just as you're listening to this, if you've listening to it quick, the sort of middle of March. So I took Lizardmen to there, and I decided to use it as a sort of an Adepticon practice. So I thought, well, I'm going to take, with the painting time I got available and what I want to take and just what I want to play with, really, I thought, I'll take this untested list. This will do. And I should, it's sort of middle ground of where I want to be by the time I've painted what I think is the list I kind of want to use and see how it goes. It's a middle ground because I won't get it all painted by Adepticon. But so I've taken my Adepticon list to Mersey, minus a special character that you like, Mr.
Yeah, I love
Teto
Teto Echo. He's just so much fun.
So I haven't got him because he's banned, basically, otherwise I would have. So
I wonder why.
So in terms of painting, I've got on the Saucy section, our premium content section of the forum, I've got my own blog, Dan's Den, and I've been updating it regularly at the moment, and people on there will already know this, but basically my target of things to do is I've had 20 Temple Guard that have been base coated and seen a lot of tournament action since the latter part of 7th edition. I need to finish them. So I've got those to finish, and I've got a load of movement trades to do and Teto Echo to finish after Mersey, because the other bits I've got to do have got to be done before Mersey, and will be just painting some more skinks up and doing some other bits and pieces. So that's been quite good, but it's just been good to get back into a hobby routine again. The one thing I do want to try and do is, when this is done, is although it's going to be a bit intense moving towards Adepticon with trying to get everything done, is I don't want to stop, because quite often what happens is you have this intense period, I've got to get this done by a tournament, then you have a big break, don't you? You don't do anything. I just want to keep chipping away, do an hour a day, just chip away, and just take it nice, steady, and enjoy it. And then you don't have the mad rushes. My problem over the amount of years is I do these massive pulls of, like, I know what'll happen. I'll come back, work will be manic, and I'll be like, no, I've got to get up and do work.
Because you don't need to do it.
Yeah, I've got to get up, and something else will take its priority, or the Diablo 3 expansion's coming out soon for my computer. So, there's all these kind of things which could impact on it. But my real hope is that I carry on and just do. Carry on with the hobby, and part of me thinks with the way we're gonna come back pumped about Adepticon. The one thing that probably will take my time when I come back from Adepticon is editing whatever we record. We're discussing about whether to do video as well. We might well do some video while we're out there, just to give the listeners a bit of a more of a balanced view, so you can listen to the audio, you can see the video, and the photos and things. So we're still discussing that, because there's obviously a cost implication with that, but so lots of things, and that's going to take up some time when I come back. But from a hobby perspective at the moment, I'm really pumped. And the one thing I would like to do is carry on when I come back, chipping away. And you and I keep talking about terrain, boards, scenarios, and I would love to do a campaign-y type thing this summer. For me,
which we are going to do.
Yeah, we are. We've got several things on the horizon for this, but I definitely think we should get the club involved with some sort of map-based terrain.
Yeah.
I've been given the wink that Dave Hansen, if you're listening, is apparently good at this. So one of our club members. So we'll have to speak to him about maybe doing something and trying to get some people involved, because we've got such a thriving club at the moment. It's unreal. So if we could just get everyone on board with that, that'd be good. But yeah, all those kind of things. I'd love to do that during the summer, and just get some cool stuff done. So that's the plan anyway. And still enjoying playing the Lizards. Been chipping away, playing a game a week at least. Found them quite tough to get my head around again, after playing Empire and things like that, which are quite solid. The Lizardmen were always kind of solid, but because they're all infantry based, they're not as, it's weird, but the way the game's moved on, they're not as solid as they were. My exact thoughts you can hear on the blog, Dan's blog. Wayne came up with that name. He's just looking at me funny. No, he didn't come up with
Why do you blame me for like your rubbish
awesome
names?
Yeah. It should be said, I know I've said this on the last show, it'll be out now by the time you listen to it. Isn't out. I had another faux pas with the recorder and somehow lost 20 minutes of myself in the middle of the show. So I've got the end and the beginning recorded, so I've got to go and re-record it. The problem we have in Heelanwood Studios is that it's also occupied, this house, by 2 noisy children, 2 noisy dogs, and extremely clumsy, well, not clumsy, she is clumsy, but noisy wife. So I have to time when I can record based on when everyone is not here or quiet, and I just it hasn't fallen right at the moment. So but we're going to get back on that. So I've been doing a ton of stuff. Like for me, I'll give you an example of the kind of stuff I've been doing. I've painted, let's work this out, I've painted 14 skink. I've made and painted 2 movement trays. I have relabeled all my skinks with numbers so that the paving lines up on them properly when they're ranked up. And I've got like Wheels, Ruin Temple, and not that anyone would probably notice, but it goes. Everyone I've told about this is like, does it? Oh yeah, it does. The paving tends to go through the sort of the units as if it's all one. Does
it upset you? You've got to tell all.
Yeah. I think the thing is because not the whole army doesn't do it at the moment. It did when it was in 7th. It did. And then as the editions have changed and the books changed, I've been chopping and changing the units. So I've lost the cohesion of it, but I've been slowly putting it back into place. And with the new stuff I'm painting, it's all back. So, but yes, I've done all that. So I've relabeled all the guys. I've been doing new movement trays. I've been shopping. I've been playing. Just loads of just squeezing a bit in here. But, with South Coast GT and the podcast and getting on Skype to record and all these kind of things, obviously it takes a lot of time away. But, so that's really what I'll do. But I can't tell you how excited I am about Adepticon. My partner, I've been in contact with my partner. You've been in contact with your partner.
Yep.
We've been talking to people who we're going out with. We've sort of we've already booked where we're eating, I think, on the Thursday and the Friday night because certain different listeners are
because my
showing us the ropes.
What is it? A team event? It's called.
Yeah, it's the team championships on the Friday.
Yeah, because me and Jeff are teaming up, and he's taking lizards and scaling. That should be interesting.
Oh, Wayne, I forgot to tell you, you're gonna love my team, mine and my partner's team tournament lists. You're just gonna love it when you see it. I'll give you a clue. It fights and shoots stuff. There you go. You obviously know mine's lizards, and my opponent's does lots of fighting, and it's brilliant. I'm not going to say it's going to win, it's going to smash everyone, but I think we're going to have a lot of fun. I think we're going to have a lot of fun playing it. So,
when you say fun, you mean smashing people out and ruining their hobby?
No, because if I say that, I know what we're going to play. And I'm not even giving you any hints.
I'm going to love it if me and Jeff play you two guys, and you just have rubbish dice, and it
all
all falls apart.
Yeah,
and we just play like numpties and smashes 20-0. It'd be brilliant.
Yeah, it will be. But no, I'm really looking forward to it, actually. I've played quite a few doubles over the years. I've played with you in that, and I find doubles is an interesting one because especially when we're playing with random partners. I mean, you've had a lot more experience than me with random partners, but they're not random partners. You know who our partners are, but we've not met them personally. So that's going to be fun. I'm always interested to play with different people.
You're going down then?
No,
doubles is my thing.
So we're doing it. What is this a challenge? You laying down the gauntlet? You're
doubles
going to finish
is my
higher
thing.
than me and my partner. Nah, it's not happening. It's not happening. Yeah, we're going to finish higher.
We'll see. See, I've got nothing to lose, man. If you finish higher than me, but Dan's a better player. If I finish than you, man, I'm going to gloat. You're going to get it both barrels, I'll tell you.
Yeah, it should be good. So, so I'm looking forward to it. I think we've got decent lists, But, that aside, I'm just looking forward to playing a load of new people. I mean, this is the exciting thing about Adepticon more than anything, is meeting a load of new war gamers that we would have never, ever seen before. When you play in that many years in the UK, you do recognise a lot of people. I'm going to the Mersey Meltdown, and there's probably, I don't know, if I'm generous, I'd say there's probably 10 people there that I wouldn't know the name of by looking at them out of like a field of 80 odd, and that's probably most tournaments would have said. And even sometimes when I don't know their names, I'd know the face because I've seen them around. So this is the most exciting thing for us, is we're coming out to see. I'm really looking forward to the social and the evenings with the guys that have offered to take us out and show us the eateries. I'm looking forward to that. So that's going to be good. And we've still got plenty of time and nights free, haven't we? We've left to
we got the
see
Thursday
where
night booked and the Friday.
Yeah,
and we left it's probably a good thing leaving the Saturday free, because obviously that would be the first day of the tournament. And
yeah,
it's
sure.
Probably
have a few beers in the hotel.
Yeah, absolutely.
We need to eat, so
and hopefully there'll be lots of people to talk to and meet, and it'd be great. And really, it's going to be so good. Yep. I mean, I've done America a few times, but obviously in the early days. But for you, I'm kind of, I know I'm kind of expecting what's going to happen. I'm kind of, Americans that love their hobby. There's no doubt about it. They are. I'd say they're more. I would say more enthusiastic, but outwardly they are. They show it a lot more how enthusiastic
they are. They're going to have to go some to be more enthusiastic than us, Wayne. That's all I'm going to say. So I'm really looking forward to it.
It just didn't out.
You can tell we're excited.
We're quite reserved. The British in general are quite reserved about it, aren't they? We talk amongst ourselves and all that, but we don't give it the high fives and all that. That's not really our culture. Obviously, it's different in America. They do express it a lot more. But
I've seen their forums. They express a lot of stuff.
yeah.
No, it's.
But it's great. I mean, it's just going to be such a different experience for both of us doing it. I just think that. The big plus side is all that stuff we talked about. We need to do, like the scenery and the scenario games, which we're going to do. I think when we get back, it's going to happen because we're going to be so pumped about the whole experience of going to Adepticon.
Definitely, and before that, it's quite nice because I've got before and after is quite interesting, isn't it? Because before, as I said, 2 weeks before, I'm at a tournament in England for the Mersey Meltdown, which is great. And the cool thing is I haven't been there for. To Mersey for a while, and it's an on-campus in a hotel, just like it's going to be in America. So I got a really nice, and I'm not driving, which is amazing. Thank you, Brian, the hobby killer. So I've got that, which is going to be an awesome weekend of chilling and playing. And then I got 2 weeks, and then it's that, and then we have got the craziness, but the thing that is really fun that we like doing, which is the South Coast GT that we're running. And when we come back, we've got 3 days or so to recover and get back and. Get into that.
Yeah, those 2 weeks are going to be crazy, aren't they?
Yeah.
They really are.
So hobby, loads and loads of hobby. So anyway, we just rattle on about this all day.
Could just say, because I don't think we said this on the last show, but everyone that's donated money for us to go to America, can we just thank you wholeheartedly for the donations that you've made? Because obviously you guys know who you are. Without you guys, it just wouldn't be possible. So, from both of us, thank you very much.
No, massively appreciated. And we should say as well, this goes out to the Saucy members. I mean, to give you an idea, I would say we've probably paid a quarter, maybe stretch into a third of the trip, maybe by donations. And then another quarter is probably Saucy. And then I'd say half to a third we've had to make up ourselves, completely roughly. But we just couldn't have done it without your support.
Without any one of those elements, it wouldn't happen.
Yeah, without it. So it's not only is it those guys that have donated individually and all the offers for help as well when we're out there, with lifts from the airport and all that kind of stuff. Massive thank you. But also to all those guys that pay for their Saucy subscriptions, because I think somebody said it best, and I think they enjoyed being quoted. And I'm going to use this one now for a while. The Saucy is an investment rather than a purchase. So
Indeed.
And it really does help support. I mean, we were talking about weighing up the pros and cons of buying a load of audio gear before we go. Obviously, the way we fund things is the way most people fund things. They bung it on a credit card and then hope to pay it off at some point, and that can only be done by the support of you guys and the show. So nice one, Wayne. Big thank you to everybody. And if you are out there and have donated, and even if you haven't donated, if you're a Saucy member, if you're anybody that's interested in the show, please come up and say hi. Don't be one of those guys that tweets me when we come home saying, I saw you and I really want to say hello, but we didn't for X reason. Just come up and say hi, because we love talking about the hobby.
We don't bite.
No, we don't.
Unless you look like a piece of pizza, and then Dan will be all over.
I will be, especially if it's pepperoni. Anyway, I suppose we better get out of here, Wayne. So anything else you want to discuss before we leg it?
No. I'm going to say big plans, so.
Yeah, big plans.
We've been discussing off air. We can't go into it at the moment. We've been discussing off air about what we are definitely going to be doing in the future, and we got some really cool stuff lined up. But you'll hear about it soon.
Yeah, just show topics, and we got a couple of shows and some follow ups and stuff that we like the idea of. So we're always talking about future things to do. So that's going to be great. So make sure you check out our sponsors, www.oldgames.co.uk. Make sure you use the code for some extra savings that is in the show notes, especially if you're into your X-Wing. There's loads of that out there. Magic the Gathering as well. Ton of new stuff that's just been released for them. They've got on the site a really, really competitive and good prices. we've already just rattled on about it, but the Saucy, our super awesome Wargamers Club, part of the forum, it's £18 a year. It gets you a year's worth of access to our forum. It's the entire back catalogue of the show. We've got a load of army book reviews up there. The latest one we've added is, and I think it's one of our best personally, is the Empire review that we did with Scott the Boss lines from the Black Sun. Really, really good show. I mean, it's very popular and it's had a lot of downloads already for the Saucy members, but it's definitely worth checking out. And if you're an budding Empire general, or anybody who's just interested in the fluff as well, I mean, we've covered all the angles. Make sure you check that out. And then you've got articles we've done over the years, magnetising your army. I know you can always hear about me and Wayne chatting about the way we transport our army and magnetise it around. There's a guide telling you how to do that. There's a dipping guide, how to do dip. There's just tons of stuff on there from the years we've been on it, and it's constantly being added to. So check that out. It's my main blog in place, apart from the fact we tell you guys in here as well. I like to blog on there, both audio and written and pictures, thanks to the great technology that is an iPhone, all that kind of stuff. If you do get a chance and you do enjoy the show, make sure you check us out with the iTunes reviews on iTunes. Drop us a decent review. It helps us move up the charts. There's a lot of budding Warhammer players that won't have heard of us, and it's always good to keep spreading the word. And of course, more than anything, tell your friends. Please get them to listen to us. We really enjoy being able to communicate with a wide audience, and also getting feedback from you. You know, the show, we really do see the show as a two-way affair, and it's great to be in so much correspondence with everybody. And the wider the base, the more we get that kind of interaction. So that's brilliant. Thanks once again for joining us. Wayne, anything else?
No.
Good. That's how we like it. So until next time, people, we'll see you soon. See you then.
Bye-bye.